Part 60. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 620. If you ask me now, I can only think of something like dry ice, but this thing is obviously not dry ice, and we have not observed the rising white mist, Kaylan said. Dry ice is the common name for solid carbon dioxide. In the old days, the most common use of dry ice for ordinary people was to create smoke on stages or in movies and TV shows. In fact, this substance is used more in industry. Low-temperature refrigeration, transportation and cleaning of some special equipment. No matter what it is used for, the reason why dry ice can work is inseparable from its ability to sublimate easily. Kaylan can confirm that the crystals found in the cranial cavity of the wolf-like creature are definitely not dry ice, and the way it disappears is not sublimation or volatilization at all. Sublimation or volatilization of any substance will take away a certain amount of heat. It is precisely because of this characteristic that dry ice can be used for emergency cooling. The large amount of smoke generated when dry ice sublimates is due to the low temperature causing water vapor in the air to condense into small droplets, turning the water vapor that cannot be observed with the naked eye into water vapor like white mist. But Kaylan and the others not only did not observe water vapor, but there was no obvious change in the readings of the thermometer. Continue the dissection and cut open the entire cranial cavity, Kaylan said to Yvonne. If you don't stop doing it, since you have wasted a sample, you must at least squeeze out the value of the sample. Yeah, Yvonne nodded, picked up the saw drill again, and began to expand the incision. Soon, the two of them lifted up the entire Tianling cover. Look, this is where the cranial cavity and the spine are connected. This spinal canal is also empty in the middle, Yvonne pointed with a light. This should have been the location of the medulla oblongata, which is the densest place of neurons in the body, but at this moment what the two of them saw was only an empty spinal canal. Expand the scope of the anatomy and take apart the entire spine to take a look, Kaylan said. I think so too. The process of disassembling the spine was more complicated than a craniotomy, but because the two of them had nothing to worry about at this time, the movements under their hands naturally accelerated. In less than 20 minutes, all the vertebrae in the cervical spine were removed. It was taken apart. Humans have 7 cervical vertebrae, namely C1, C7, while this wolf-like creature has only 4 cervical vertebrae, but each one is nearly twice as long as the human cervical vertebrae. Sure enough, there are cavities inside these vertebrae. Yvonne held a bone under the spotlight, so, it's not that this creature doesn't have nerve cells, but that their nerves have been damaged by that kind of sight, replaced by light dead crystals. But this structure is too unreasonable, right? Yvonne said again. If this kind of crystal will automatically decompose after being exposed, then if these wolf-like creatures are injured, it is not fatal. It will become fatal due to crystallization. From a biological and evolutionary perspective, it is undoubtedly very stupid. You cannot look at these creatures from the perspective of natural evolution. They are probably all modified biological weapons, although from the perspective of weapons, this design is stupid enough, Kaylan said. What should we do now? Yvonne asked. As for the equipment in the base, we can't come up with anything if we continue to study it, Kaylan said. I will ask someone to send a group of professional-level equipment and researchers here, but there is one thing to say. Since the Institute after the accident, it seems that there are really not many scientific research talents in this field. Those private research organizations are actually quite embarrassing. After all, who has the ability to leave an academic holy place like the Research Institute? If you don't go, why don't you stay and work in a private enterprise? In the old era, private companies might have been able to retain talents through high salaries, but on Ark, whether it was salary, authority, or status, the Institute could crush civil organizations. Since it has the opportunity to become a real, who would be willing to stay in the mundane world among the human beings? I would rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix is a saying used by incompetent people to comfort themselves, but in the eyes of those who are truly capable, pursuing and ambitious, The saying people go to high places, water flows to low places, it is the eternal truth. The two cleaned up the scene. Yvonne stayed in the laboratory and continued writing reports, while Kaylan stretched out and walked out unsteadily. There was originally no distinction between day and night in the core power room, but the designers had a sudden idea and moved the virtual sky dome system on the Ark to the base. When Kaylan looked up, he saw that half of the huge warm halo behind the radiation clouds had sunk below the horizon. The last rays of the setting sun coated the entire base with a layer of soft gold. You actually stayed in the laboratory for so long, Kaylan sighed softly. The exploration operation in Block 1 started before 10 o'clock in the morning, and Kaylan and the others returned after cooking the group of wolf-like creatures. It was only early 12 o'clock at noon when we were at the base. In the blink of an eye, it was already almost night. What's going on over there in Block 1? Kaylan took out his cell phone and sent a message to the online discussion group of Operation Exploration. Everything is normal. According to the original plan, someone will come back every half hour to report the news. The last return was 7 minutes ago, Hound quickly replied. People from the engineering team and survey team have been sent there. The outpost is probably almost complete now, at least the people staying there won't have to spend the night in the open tonight. Where is the survey team? Is there any news? Kaylan asked. They collected some rock samples and sent them back to the Ark together with the first batch of wolf-like biological samples. Then these people started drilling wells on the ground, the Hound replied. Drilling? Is it to measure the thickness of the rock formation? Yes, according to them, if Block 1 is really a cabin inside Yagunactor, the rock formations on the surface are just a layer of camouflage, and there must be other things underneath. If you feel something is wrong, I can send someone over immediately to stop them. It's okay, let them drill, Kaylan said. Anyway, the purpose of organizing the aircraft and convoy was to explore the boundary of Block 1. Of course, the underground boundary is also the boundary. If they find anything, the first time will report to me. I know. Oh, by the way, I have to remind you about something. The eldest lady from the Soma family is also here. Zofia. Yeah, by the way, have you already captured the eldest lady? Hound suddenly switched from the group chat to a private chat, and sent a lewd and evil smile. What did you say? Don't pretend to be stupid for me, I can tell it right away with your appearance, Hound said. How about it, the taste of the lady, isn't it great? How did you see it? Kaylan was very puzzled. Can you really see something like this? Hee, I can't tell you this, it's a secret that is not told. The Hound sent another hee expression. I know that young people have good physical strength, but remember to take it easy and don't let your waist slip. Stop it, Kaylan said quickly, let's stop this topic dash. Okay, as long as you don't be late tomorrow morning, otherwise you will be embarrassed. When Gang Kellen returned to his residence, he happened to see a graceful figure standing in front of the cabinet, looking at the displays inside. Ian's cabinet is naturally not filled with priceless works of art like those of wealthy families. This cabinet is basically equipped with equipment that he commonly uses on a daily basis. At this time, Zofia is playing with it. That big caliber hunting pistol that I've had for many years. I bought this gun when I just obtained the hunter qualification certificate. It was a second-hand gun and cost only 2,800 resource points, Kaylan said. At that time, someone told me that the pistols used by hunters had higher calibers. Bigger is better, but after I bought it, I realized that as a child at that time, I couldn't control such a huge recoil. What about now? Zofia turned her head and asked with a smile. There is no problem now, but it can't help at all with the problems I face now, Kaylan shrugged helplessly. But you are still taking good care of it. Green fingers stroked the sleeve of the pistol. Although there was not much paint left on the gun body, the exposed metal parts were wiped clean. It is shiny, and vulnerable parts such as the trigger and magazine release button have been replaced with customized reinforcements. A series of codes mixed with English and numbers are engraved on the grip with a knife. That's my personal identification number. At that time, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to remember it, so I engraved it on the handle. Kaylan said, "By the way, why are you here? I told you before that I will also participate in this exploration operation, and you agreed." Sophia put the pistol back where it belonged, turned around and said, "When did you come here? You didn't tell me in advance so that I could arrange for someone to pick you up." Kaylan took 2 steps closer to Sophia, and suddenly, a familiar fragrance penetrated his nose. "I came here with the second batch of material delivery team of the Soma Consortium. When they first arrived, they told me that you were in the laboratory, so I didn't go over to disturb you." Sophia raised her eyebrows and glanced with some annoyance. Kaylan glanced at him and grabbed the hand that slipped silently to his waist. "Your self-control was not that bad before, but why now? There is an idiom in China called eat the marrow to know the taste. You should know it, right?" As he spoke, Kaylan had already hugged Sophia horizontally, and buried her into her neck, greedily sniffing. "Don't be here, go inside." Sophia's body suddenly froze when Kaylan did this. She wrapped her arms around Kaylan's upper body and kicked gently with her 2 long legs. "It's okay, I locked the door," Kaylan said, then put the delicate body in his arms on the large desk. Meanwhile, Ark, Institute. Although the mimetic infection incident reduced the Institute's staff by nearly 90%, the Institute was not in a hurry to recruit new people. Not only that, even the regular monthly admission assessments were stopped. The current research institute has basically been completely taken over by the Crisis Management Department. The entire West District is surrounded by armed personnel with live ammunition on 3 levels inside and 3 outside. Most people don't even come close, even if they go in this direction. If you take a few glances, you will immediately be questioned by the guards. If you dare to stop and look, you will find several red spots on your body in the next second. Those are the laser sights of snipers and machine gunners. These people have already received permission to fire. As long as someone attempts to forcefully break into the West District, they can be killed without verifying their identity, even if this person is often in the news. Anyone who appears on the program as a member of the Joint Council or a high-ranking general with several stars on his shoulders will be killed without mercy as long as he violates the rules. The death of a large number of researchers should have been a disaster no less than a magnitude 10 earthquake for the ARC academic community. However, after the incident happened, a strange phenomenon occurred. Many people in their respective fields, famous experts, those who should have died from mimetic infection incidents, they have not disappeared, but still appear in various interview programs, and any research topics that overlap with the private sector are also. Everything is going on in an orderly manner. As for the death news of these experts, no media has published it. Lin Kaiming also knew that this was probably a special method used by the people above to maintain stability, but the question, how long could it be hidden like this? Although the blocks inside the institute have been cleaned up, the damaged buildings have not yet been repaired. Even though the Crisis Management Department has adopted Kayan's suggestion and invited civil society organizations to participate in the reconstruction of the institute, the specifics are still unclear. The progress is still as slow as a snail's pace. The repair of the external buildings alone is initially estimated to take more than half a year. But buildings are actually the least valuable thing in the institute. The most valuable asset of the entire institute is neither the expensive high-tech equipment nor the rare collections transported from various ruins. It's the researchers in white coats themselves. I'm afraid it won't be possible to recover from this loss without a few decades. Sooner or later, this matter must be disclosed to the public. Lin Kaiming, who was sitting behind his desk, sighed. He was about to make a cup of coffee to refresh himself, but the exclusive secretary who had just been assigned to him had already opened the door and left. "Come in." "Is something wrong?" Lin Kaiming glanced at the secretary. Although this girl in her early 20s looked like a fresh graduate from university, in fact, She was already working in the security department before she was transferred to the crisis management department. Bureau has 6 years of work experience. Yaguniketer sent an application, asking us to organize a team of biological experts to provide technical support to them. In addition to important people, they also asked for a lot of equipment. They are all on the embargo list, the secretary said. What's going on? Did you find anything over there? Lin Kaiming immediately sat up straight in his chair. Although the matter of Yagunakter was not within his scope of authority, when the name was mentioned, a young figure immediately appeared in his mind. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 621. It seems that some unknown creature was discovered during the exploration and a living sample was successfully captured. The secretary pushed up the glasses frame on the bridge of his nose and said, "She actually does not have myopia. Even if she did, her profession would require her to have corrective surgery before joining the job. With ARC's current medical standards, myopia correction is a minor surgery that has been very mature in the old era. Its difficulty is about the same as pulling out wisdom teeth. Except for some people who cannot undergo surgery due to their own reasons, it can be said that the myopia patients on the ARC have almost disappeared. Glasses, however, have been retained as decorations and protective equipment. The retro-style gold-rimmed glasses worn by the secretary are actually a smart AR display. When she focuses her gaze on someone or something, the data and information related to it will be displayed. Will quickly appear on this screen. She noticed that after hearing the name Yagunakter, her young boss's heartbeat and breathing rate increased significantly. What kind of unknown creature? Lin Kaiming asked. The specific information has been sealed in the report file. I don't have permission to view it, the secretary replied. Where are the report documents? Lin Kaiming stood up. Show me. It has been temporarily stored in your mailbox. Hearing what the secretary said, Lin Kaiming, who had just stood up, immediately sat down again and tapped on the keyboard with his hands. Suddenly, his brows furrowed. How come the report document was sent to the Institute's public account? Doesn't he know that everything related to the Institute must first go through our crisis management department? Lin Kaiming's tone contained a hint of complaint and a hint of helplessness. Of course he also knew in his heart that Ian's authority was far above his own. Even if he wanted to bypass the crisis management department and go directly to the research institute, Lin Kaiming would take full advantage of him. There is no way. If someone is willing to notify me, it is already a great honor. But when Lin Kaiming clicked on the report, his brows furrowed even more. He noticed that the report document had been viewed 6 times, which meant that, besides him, 5 people had read the report first. Apart from Lin Kaiming and Schroeder, the 2 deputies of the Crisis Management Department, the only people with permission to read this report were the professors at the Institute. Although Lin Kaiming himself did not have high attainments in the academic field, as a member of the Crisis Management Department, his keen sense of smell still made him realize the importance of this report at the first time. If there was nothing in the report, if there is any deviation, it is obvious that this can definitely be regarded as a heavyweight discovery. Just when he was about to read the report again, the secretary standing aside suddenly paused and raised his hand to hold the frame on one side. Of course, Lin Kaiming also knew that the glasses worn by the secretary were not ordinary decorations. When new information was received, the frames would vibrate slightly to remind the wearer, and she subconsciously reached out to hold the frames because she felt the vibration. Is it a message from the Institute? Lin Kaiming glanced at her and asked. Yes, the secretary nodded. Dr. John Norrison and his research team applied to go to Yagunakter. Don't they know that the official members of the Institute are now restricted from leaving the ARC, or even from the West District 1? Lin Kaiming stared at the computer screen in front of him. I know, this report is very important to them, how tempting it is, but an order is an order, unless Dr. Norrison has obtained the special permission from the Crew Association. The secretary placed the tablet under his arm on Lin Kaiming's desk. This is the digital permission document just sent by the doctor. What? Lin Kaiming was slightly startled. He quickly took the tablet over and rummaged in the drawer for a while before finding something that looked like a USB flash drive and plugged it into the interface on the side of the tablet. In less than 2 seconds, the red indicator light at the end of the USB flash drive turned green with a beep. This meant that the digital license sent by Dr. Norrison and the others was valid. Does Schroeder know about this? Lin Kaiming sighed helplessly and asked. The section chief already knows, but he is busy with other things now. He said that you have full authority to handle this matter, the secretary replied. I have full authority to handle it. Lin Kaiming let out a bitter smile. I have full authority. Both sides directly bypassed our crisis management department. Our department is like a decoration, but we can't do anything with them. Forget it. Every time something happens, we have to be responsible. I finally know why the previous section chief often complained to us that the seat is not easy to sit in. Lin Kaiming complained while rubbing his cheeks. There were 2 extremely obvious dark circles around his eyes. In order to deal with the aftermath of the mimetic infection incident, he had been working overtime at high intensity for more than half a month. Now, I can't even guarantee 3 hours of sleep every day. He felt that he was on the verge of collapse at any time, but he had to finish the mountain of work on his desk before the deadline. The Crisis Management Department also lost a large number of personnel in this accident. The Security Bureau transferred some people to supplement the work, but it was only a drop in the bucket. The already extremely heavy workload has been shared by far fewer people, and the results can be imagined. If it weren't for the strong coffee and refreshing drugs, Lin Kaiming felt that he would have been lying on the table tiredly. Even his secretary was the same. The thick makeup on her face couldn't hide the huge dark circles under the frames, but instead made her face look as pale as a zombie. Although the 2 slender legs wrapped in black stockings stood straight, the muscles on the calves were beating like cramps. It was obvious that the secretary was in a state of extreme fatigue. Alas! Lin Kaiming sighed again. How are they going to get there? I mean, Dr. Norrison and the others. The doctor asked us to provide a large transport plane. Large transport aircraft? How many people are there in his research team? There are a total of 17 researchers who have applied for field work, including Dr. Norrison himself. The main reason is that the research equipment requires a relatively large space, the secretary explained. What equipment are they going to bring? Everything has been sent to you. Lin Kaiming looked at the email he had just received and felt a deep headache again. The total required transport capacity is actually 180 tons. And these are some precision instruments, which cannot be hauled with external cargo bays or hooks. Where should I find a transport aircraft of this level for them now? Lin Kaiming rubbed his temples and said, we have to find a way to borrow a military transport plane or simply find an empty ship to come over. Which military airport is closest to West District 1? Lin Kaiming raised his head and asked his secretary. It's the AF-015 airport located on the top floor of the West 3rd District. Immediately contact the garrison over there and ask them if they have any spare large transport aircraft or transport ships, Lin Kaiming said. 2 minutes later, the secretary shook his head. The airport responded that there are only fighter jets and 2 light patrol ships parked in the port, and there are no aircraft or ships that meet our requirements. The second closest military airport Deputy Section Chief, would you like to try to mobilize the transportation resources of non-governmental organizations? The secretary suddenly suggested. Civil organization? Which organization? The joint transport fleets of the Family Consortium and the Soma Consortium have just returned. Their previous mission was to transport supplies like the Agunakota. We may be able to recruit a transport aircraft from them, which can also save a lot of work. Unnecessary trouble. Just returned from Yagunaktar. What you said makes sense. Get in touch with them immediately. Lin Kaiming nodded. Deputy Section Chief, Yes, consortium expressed its willingness to lend us a Hercules heavy transport aircraft and all its crew without requiring us to reimburse any expenses, including round-trip fuel costs and labor costs for loading and unloading equipment. The aircraft will be parked now. We'll be on standby at Yong'an Port in East 2nd District. It's only 2.5 hours away from here, the secretary said. Thanks to Ian's close relationship with the family group, this has saved us a lot of money. Lin Kaiming said that although the Crisis Management Department has great power, the recruitment of civilian personnel and property also requires payment. During this period, their financial budget has already been stretched thin, so it is naturally a good thing to save some money. You go contact the first team. No, the first team should be on duty in the ice warehouse now. As for the second team, forget it. Lin Kaiming suddenly waved his hand. I will personally escort Dr. Norrison and the others there. It's not peaceful outside now. Some time ago a researcher was kidnapped and killed by a heretic sect, so I'd better go with you and feel at ease. After saying that, Lin Kaiming looked at the thick stack of documents on the table and the pile of half-processed business boxes on the computer desktop, and sighed deeply in his heart. When he comes back, I'm afraid the accumulated work will be too much. It's probably more than 10 times what it is now. He took out 2 pistols from the bottom drawer with a combination lock, inserted them into the holsters under his ribs and at his waist respectively, then grabbed the coat hanging on the back of the chair and put it on, stood up and walked outside. When passing by the secretary, Lin Kaiming paused for half a step, stretched out his hand and patted the other party's shoulder, and said, "Everyone has worked hard during this period, and it just so happens that I am out in the field. Please hurry up, it's time to take a rest and don't overwork your body." "Okay, thank you, Deputy Section Chief." The secretary was stunned for a moment and responded quickly. Compared with Lin Kaiming's sluggishness, Dr. Norrison and others who had been waiting at the entrance and exit of the blockade were in much better spirits. During this period, they were the most idle people in the entire institute. Reconstruction, there is basically no need for them to intervene in the work, and the experimental projects in various departments have been stopped. This group of people is equivalent to being forced to take paid leave, in the eyes of the social beasts, except that personal freedom will be restricted to a certain extent. There is simply nothing more enjoyable than this. But Dr. Norrison was not happy at all. Several projects he had been following up on had come to nothing. Although it was said to be suspended, many important samples and data were either destroyed or lost. Even after the institute, if they can resume normal operation, these projects will probably have no progress. For a scientific researcher, it is equivalent to losing several years of achievements. This is undoubtedly an extremely heavy blow. However, an email from Yago Nikiter made this PhD in biology, who was nearly 70 years old, suddenly excited. Although the content of the report was only a few hundred words, these few hundred words, the amount of information contained in it, instantly detonated the entire research team. As a person who has spent his whole life studying the indigenous creatures of Alpha Planet, Dr. Norrison understands the value of these wolf-like creatures far better than Kaylan and Yvonne. It is said that Yagonactor originally planned to send living samples directly to the Institute, but considering the current situation and safety issues of the Institute, they finally cancelled this decision and instead moved the research location to within the forward supply base. Dr. Norrison and others must go to Yagonactor in person if they want to get in touch with this magical biological sample for the first time. They didn't care at all about this. After all, when studying other indigenous creatures, Dr. Norrison and his research team often stayed in the wilderness for months, or even years. Deputy Section Chief Lin, seeing Lin Kaiming walking towards him with several staff from the Crisis Management Department, Dr. Norrison immediately greeted him. "We have packed all the necessary equipment and stuffed it into the truck. Regarding the transport aircraft, something. The transport plane has been contacted. Let's take the consortium's plane there," Lin Kaiming said with a cold face. "Get your people on the bus. The destination is Yong'an Port in the East 2nd District. I will personally handle this operation. Lead the escort." Yong'an Port is not far from the institute. The 2.5 hours mentioned by the secretary was a conservative estimate. In fact, under Dr. Norrison's constant urging, the convoy took less than 2 hours to complete the journey. Arrived at the port. The Hercules heavy transport aircraft painted with the emblem of the family consortium had just completed the last maintenance procedure before takeoff, and was parked on the takeoff runway, waiting for them quietly. This Hercules heavy transport aircraft is not the same model as the Hercules transport aircraft of the United States in the old era. It is a super transport aircraft specially developed by the family consortium for the transportation of construction materials at the mecha competition venue. The fuselage length of this transport aircraft is more than 80 meters, and its wingspan is more than 150 meters. This size is comparable to some small airships. For Lin Keiming and others, the transport capacity of this Hercules can be said to be more than enough. Even if Dr. Norrison's entire biological laboratory has to be moved on it, it may not be a problem. The consortium not only retained a complete crew, but also equipped a professional ground handling team. A dozen engineering mechas used for loading and unloading cargo were waiting next to the runway, waiting for their arrival. P.S. Thanks to book friend 20210126171549901 for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 622. With the assistance of the engineering mecha, the cargo boxes containing research equipment and instruments were quickly moved into the cargo hold of the Hercules. Each box was firmly stuck in the shockproof base, above, then fix it with a buffer hook to ensure that there will be no shaking or bumping during flight. Lin Keiming, Dr. Norrison, and others entered the first cabin under the guidance of several stewardesses with beautiful legs. As soon as Lin Keiming sat down, a silver trolley was pushed in front of him along the aisle between the two rows of seats. "Hello, Mr. Lin, what kind of drink would you like? Juice or alcoholic beverage?" the flight attendant's sweet voice sounded. Lin Keiming glanced at the cart, which contained almost all high-end wines at market prices for single bottles. "There is no one with less than 1,000 credit points. Bring me a cup of coffee, without milk or sugar. If there's no coffee, just water." Lin Keiming nodded to the stewardess. "Okay, the coffee needs to be freshly ground and brewed. Please wait a moment and it will be brought to you right away." The flight attendant bowed slightly, then pushed the trolley and continued walking forward. Lin Keiming turned his head slightly and stared at the flight attendant's back with squinted eyes. The other party is wearing a pair of 6-centimeter high heels, and a layer of light gray nylon stockings is wrapped around the slender and tight calves. The edge of the uniform skirt stays just 1 finger above the knee. It does not look too much. It is frivolous and can perfectly display the charm and beautiful figure of women. Lin Keiming was not an LSP. He just vaguely felt that the stewardess seemed a little strange. There was a very obvious snag mark on the gray stockings at the knee socket of the flight attendant's right leg. Logically speaking, this area would hardly rub against surrounding things during daily activities, and should not be easily damaged. That's right. If it was accidentally torn while wearing it, then just change a pair. For flight attendants working under such a large consortium, the image can be said to be very important, and they carry it in their handbags for touch ups. Cosmetics and spare stockings are definitely indispensable. There is no reason to appear in front of passengers wearing such a pair of stockings with such obvious hooks. In addition, the flight attendant's high-heeled shoe seemed to be a bit too big, so that every time she raised her legs, the heels would slip slightly. Could it be that this temporary mission was urgent, so I took the wrong shoes? Lin Keiming always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong for a while. A strong feeling of sleepiness surged into his head, and he finally got rid of the heavy workload. Now he just wanted to lean on the soft chair and sleep for a few dozen minutes. However, the energizing pill he took before setting off was still exerting its effect. Even though every cell in his body was groaning with exhaustion, his brain still remained awake. Even if he closes his eyes and falls asleep, a lot of work-related things will still appear in his mind involuntarily. The so-called rest is completely deceiving himself. With an almost imperceptible vibration in the cabin, the transport plane began to taxi on the runway. Your coffee, a delicate bone china cup and a saucer of the same style were placed in front of Lin Kaiming. Although the plane was in the take-off stage, under the adjustment of the dynamic balance device, the first-class cabin would remain the same throughout the entire journey. With the cup in a horizontal position, even if the cup is fuller, it will be difficult for it to escape. Thank you. Lin Kaiming picked up the cup and glanced at the flight attendant's face. The other person kept smiling, but Lin Kaiming always felt that the smile was very awkward, and it felt like he was smiling but not smiling. Is this probably a professional fake smile? He murmured in his heart. He didn't fly on civil aviation many times, and he had even less contact with service personnel in this type of flight attendant industry, but today he always felt like this. The flight attendant's expression seemed a little unnatural. Could it be because the plane was requisitioned? Lin Kaiming glanced down at the dark gray uniform on his body again. Civilians would be a little nervous when they see people from the security bureau. According to this, the performance of this group of flight attendants is already quite good. Headache. He took a sip of the coffee in the cup. The coffee brewed from freshly ground coffee beans was indeed much more aromatic than the instant coffee he brewed with boiling water in the office, both in terms of the initial taste and the aftertaste in his mouth after swallowing. Again, the gap between the two is simply heaven and earth. With Lin Kaiming's salary level, it's not that he can't afford such high-end coffee beans, but with his way of drinking coffee as boiled water, I'm afraid he still can't afford to buy high-end coffee beans even if his salary is increased tenfold. Let's continue drinking instant coffee when we go back, at least the department can reimburse it. Putting down the cup, he casually pulled out a magazine from under the table. As a YIP consortium aircraft, most of the magazines provided to passengers are actually their own mecha advertisements, but the one in Lin Kaiming's hands was obviously old. Not only were the corners of the magazine yellowed and warped, but the mechas used in the cover renderings were also old models from a few years ago. East 2nd District, Yonganport. Jimmy Garrigan, wearing a one-piece anti-fouling overalls, used a crowbar to pry open the sewer cover of the airport bathroom. Suddenly, a disgusting rancid smell surged up from the well. Damn, if it wasn't for the money, I wouldn't want to do this job. Jimmy cursed, put on the gas mask, and climbed down the escalator on the shaft wall step by step. He is the staff member responsible for the underground sewage pipeline system in ARC East District 2. Although his work certificate says water supply and drainage engineer, the actual work he does is no different from that of a plumber in the old era. Due to the existence of autonomous robots, the profession of plumbers has disappeared on the Ark for a long time, but this does not mean that people can completely leave the drainage and sewage system to the machine. The pipeline network on the entire Ark is intricate, and its total length altogether, it is estimated that they can circle Alpha Star hundreds of times. Someone has even said this, in terms of complexity alone, the pipeline system inside the Ark is no less than a maze in an A-level ruins. No matter how sophisticated and advanced the machine is, there is no way to avoid the occurrence of malfunctions. Although the probability is very low, when the overall base is large enough, things with low probability will become a daily occurrence. At this time, staff like Jimmy are needed to take action. What a ghost. 4 autonomous clearing robots actually got stuck at the same point. Even if they got stuck, even the automatic maintenance robot broke down at the same time. This is too outrageous. Jimmy complained while holding a flashlight and bending down to walk deeper into the pipe. He didn't notice at all that the pipe was filled with a strong smell of blood at this time. This smell passed through the filter element of the gas mask. It smelled almost like rust, and it didn't arouse his vigilance at all. It's strange. This track looks quite new. There's no rust at all. It should have been replaced within a year. Even if it gets stuck, it shouldn't get stuck on this new track. Who is there? Jimmy walked forward about 50 meters, and the reflection of the flashlight seemed to illuminate a figure lying on the ground, which immediately startled him. Is it a living person? Hello. If you can hear it, just squeak. Jimmy couldn't help but tighten the crowbar in his hand, and moved the flashlight little by little to the figure. This is a young woman, wearing only close-fitting underwear, lying almost naked in the pipe, her whole face soaked in the sewage accumulated at the bottom of the pipe, her long chestnut hair floating on the water, motionless. Jimmy's face suddenly turned pale. He didn't even need to get close to check, but he was already sure that this woman was a corpse, even if there were no fatal injuries on her body. With her face buried in the water in this position, it won't be long before she dies of suffocation. If we count the time the autonomous robot got stuck, this woman might have been lying here for half an hour. Why would someone come into the pipe? Jimmy's hand holding the flashlight trembled involuntarily, and the light beam emitted by the flashlight swayed greatly. The pipes were also illuminated. There was far more than one corpse like this. More than a dozen corpses were thrown into the sewage pipes. Several of them had been pushed under the tracks by the stuck autonomous robots and were crushed to a bloody pulp. No wonder these robots are stuck. These corpses have already blocked the entire pipeline. It's no wonder they are not stuck. Most of these corpses are tall young women, and there are only about 4 or 5 male corpses. These corpses have a common feature, that is, almost all their clothes have been stripped off. They look like those that were left in the garbage dump. Just like the plastic mannequins in it. These people did not seem to have been dead for a long time. There were no spots or swelling on the corpses. Except for the few corpses that had been crushed by the robots, the other corpses were still in good condition. In the past, when he was bragging to people on the internet, Jimmy had said something like taking advantage of the heat, but now he couldn't even think of such an idea. He just wanted to run away and leave this damn place. Jimmy felt that his legs were a little weak. He held onto the wall of the pipe and took several deep breaths before facing the direction of the pile of corpses and retreating step by step. It wasn't until he had exited nearly 20 meters that he suddenly turned around, regardless of his head hitting the top of the pipe, and ran towards the mouth of the pipe desperately. At this time, he could no longer care about any maintenance work. After crawling out of the well on his hands and knees, Jimmy stayed in place for 2 seconds, then knocked open the bathroom door and ran to the corridor. He originally wanted to call the police, but he soon realized that it was difficult to explain the situation in the sewers in a few words on the phone. Instead of calling the police, it would be more straightforward to find the security personnel at the port and ask them to investigate. Jimmy looked around and happened to see a tall man in a black security uniform standing in the corridor with his back against the wall. His eyes seemed to be looking towards him intentionally or unintentionally. Security. Security. Jimmy immediately ran towards the other party as if he had seen a life-saving straw. Something happened. Something happened down there. What happened? What happened? The security guard turned around and faced Jimmy with a confused look on his face, but Jimmy didn't notice that the moment he spoke, there was a sinister look on the other person's face. There was a flash in his eyes. The sewer, there are corpses down there. There are many corpses. The corpses blocked the pipes. The robot was stuck by the corpses. Before he could say stuck or stuck, he felt a sharp pain coming from his abdomen. He lowered his head and found that the security guard had a metal cone in his hand. Stabbed into his own body. Jimmy couldn't help but widen his eyes. He wanted to shout, but his mouth was already covered by the other party. With his thin body, he couldn't compete with the tall security guard in front of him. His physical strength was draining out of his body along with the blood. The one-piece anti-fouling suit he was wearing actually helped the other party at this time, All the blood flowing out from the wound was pocketed by the anti-fouling suit, and not a single drop of it was stained. To the ground. You, Jimmy's struggle became weaker and weaker, and the voice in his throat became smaller and smaller. From his perspective, darkness and cold were gradually occupying the entire world. There was a cruel smile on the corner of this security guard's mouth. At this time, on the Hercules transport plane, Lin Kaiming has finished his third cup of coffee, and the magazine on the table has been turned to the last page. He is actually not interested in mechas at all, but at this time he can only use it to kill time on the road. He looked around the first-class cabin. Several flight attendants were sitting on the seats beside the front and rear doors. Apart from them, the people sitting outside were all field operators from his crisis management section. As for the researchers, is sitting near the center. This position is arranged as if the group of researchers are surrounded in the middle, but they don't seem to care about such trivial matters at all, and are gathering together in twos and threes, talking enthusiastically about content related to the research topic. Lin Kaiming turned his head. One side happened to be the porthole of the plane. He subconsciously glanced outside, but he couldn't help but frown. The transport plane was heading due north of the Ark at this time. This was not the direction to Yagunactor. How is this going? Lin Kaiming frowned slightly. He stood up and walked towards the cockpit, but was stopped by the flight attendant at the first-class door. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 623. Mr. Lin, do you need anything? The stewardess asked with a smile. Is the plane's course off? Lin Kaiming stared at the other person and asked. Oh, that's it? A thunderstorm appeared on the original route. This aircraft is not equipped with an energy shield generator. For safety reasons, the captain decided to make a detour. The stewardess paused for a moment and then immediately approached Lin Kaiming, explained that the expression on her face did not change during the entire process. Did I guess wrong? Lin Kaiming murmured in his heart. He wanted to read some flaws in the other person's eyes, but staring at a person of the opposite sex for a long time could easily make him be regarded as a pervert. Even if he was regarded as a pervert, Lin Kaiming doesn't care about such trivial matters, but if the other party really has a problem, doing so is tantamount to alerting the enemy. After thinking for a moment, the expression on his face changed to a frivolous one. He leaned forward slightly, rubbed the flight attendant's thigh with his knee intentionally or unintentionally, and said in a low voice, "Madam, if you don't mind, can you tell me your name and contact information?" Since he will be regarded as a pervert, he might as well do a complete act and collect some useful information. In order to make the effect more realistic, he even put his hand directly on the other person's arm. The uniform skirt worn by the stewardess was short-sleeved, and Lin Kaiming could directly touch the other person's skin, and the powerful muscles under the skin. Perhaps this flight attendant's hobby is fitness. After all, for their line of work, body management should be quite important. Lin Kaiming was still trying to excuse the other party in his mind. Although he was aware of the problem, he still hoped that this everything is just my own illusion. Otherwise, this would be a lot of fun. Mr. Lin, I'm working, the stewardess said with a slight frown, calmly avoiding Lin Kaiming's hands-on and taking a step back. At least let me know your name, Lin Kaiming continued to ask shamelessly. Helen, the flight attendant said reluctantly. Helen, what a name. Do you know the Trojan War in ancient Greek legend? It broke out between the two countries to compete for a peerless beauty called Helen, Lin Kaiming said. He has almost no experience in picking up girls, and his communication with the opposite sex is limited to work level. Fortunately, he likes to read in his spare time, and has some ink in his stomach, so he won't be exposed all of a sudden. Sorry, I haven't heard of this story. Stewardess Helen shook her head, showing a lack of interest. Ah, this is a little embarrassing. Lin Kaiming laughed twice. He had obtained the key information and it was time to retreat. Okay then, "May I ask Miss Helen, which direction is the bathroom?" "Go to the end of the corridor and turn right." "Thanks." Lin Kaiming nodded, then turned around and walked quickly towards the tail of the plane. He walked very quickly, just in time to act out the situation of failing to strike up a conversation and wanting to escape from this embarrassing situation quickly. When he passed by his seat, he grabbed a briefcase he was carrying and put it in his arms. The other party probably didn't notice anything unusual. Lin Kaiming thought to himself, taking 3 steps at a time and dodging into the bathroom, turning around and locking the door. He first checked whether there was a camera in the bathroom. After making sure that he was not being monitored, he immediately took out a multi-purpose knife from his briefcase and moved it to the side of the porthole. The glass used in the portholes of transport aircraft like this is all customized. Each piece of porthole glass has a unique serial number, corresponding to the aircraft using it. As long as the serial number can be found, Lin Kaiming can find what he wants to know. Things. Although this Hercules transport aircraft is the private property of the YIP Consortium, since it can enter and leave the ARC's airport, it must have been registered with the relevant departments. Then, there must be information about this aircraft and its crew in the archives. Lin Kaiming took out a screwdriver from his utility knife, inserted it into the gap in the airtight tape on the edge of the porthole, and started to pry it gently. Soon, the airtight strips clinging to the glass were pried open, revealing a row of characters engraved on the edge of the porthole glass. Glass type, specification, manufacturer. Connect the initials of these information together, plus the production batch number of this piece of glass, and you will get the unique serial number. Lin Kaiming immediately opened the electronic device he carried with him and entered the serial number. The search results came out quickly. This piece of special glass was indeed provided to the transport aircraft production line of the family consortium, and was assembled on a Hercules transport aircraft numbered A-136. Lin Kaiming couldn't help but blame himself. If he had paid attention to the number printed on the fuselage when he was boarding the plane, he would have saved all these steps, saving at least 5 minutes. He blamed himself, and he did not stop. After locking the aircraft model and number, he immediately called up the crew list of the aircraft. The entire list contained more than 100 people in total, and the crew members of this aircraft were the crew adopts a 3-shift rotation mechanism, but the specific rotation sequence is not stated in the information. But fortunately, there is only one female flight attendant named Helen in the entire list. She belongs to Class B and is a first-class service staff. So far, there was no problem with Helen's identity, but when Lin Kaiming clicked on the details, his expression immediately changed. The picture of Helen in the information does not match the Helen just outside at all. Helen in the photo, although she is also a beauty, is a Hispanic woman with whitish skin, and the person Lin Kaiming chatted with just now was a blonde, white-skinned, authentic Caucasian. If there is a certain difference between the appearance and the photo due to makeup or plastic surgery, it can barely be explained, but even the race has changed. It is obvious, the Helen outside, and this crew list Helen in it is not a person at all. Lin Kaiming's breathing became a little faster. He looked back at the locked door, then took out 2 miniature silencers from the mezzanine of the briefcase, about the same length and thickness as his little finger, and installed them on the gun. Then, he began to look through the files of other crew members of Class B. Most of the crew members are good-looking young women, but none of the flight attendants in the cabin outside who Lin Kaiming has an impression of are not on this list. He quickly looked through the list of Class B, and then he roughly looked through the personnel files of Class A and Class C. He is now basically certain that almost all the crew members on this plane have been swapped out. As for the identity of this group of people now, it is a complete mystery. If I had known, I would have bought a pair of AR smart glasses. Lin Kaiming thought to himself, if that thing was there, he wouldn't even need to stare at the other person, he would just let the person's face appear in his field of vision for a few seconds. The AI of the glasses will automatically scan the face for recognition and match it with the data in the archive. But now, he can't just shine his phone's camera in someone's face, can he? But no matter what, if the bad intentions come, the good ones will not come. Combined with the other party to secretly change the course, Lin Keiming has classified all these crew members into the enemy camp in his heart. From the current point of view, the target of this group of people should be the research team headed by Dr. Norrison. After the mimetic incident, Dr. Norrison's research team was almost the only complete research team in the entire institute. At that time, they happened to be observing the migration paths of indigenous creatures, and they were able to escape. If something happened to this group of people in Lin Keiming's hands, then Lin Keiming felt that there was no need for him to live. Protect the safety of the researchers, and then regain control of the plane, if possible, leave as many survivors as possible. This was the goal Lin Keiming set for himself. There were 9 crisis management officers he brought over, including himself. Each one of them was a veteran. If the other party was just an ordinary hijacker, this group of people could easily subdue them. Currently, the premise is that this group of people are ordinary hijackers. Lin Keiming also knew very well that this probability was almost infinitely close to zero. Although there have always been some opposition groups hidden in the darkness of Ark, the most radical among these groups cannot do anything like hijacking. If it were them, the most they could do would be to plant bombs in the airport bathroom. As for sending a group of professional-level personnel to subcontract the entire crew, it is simply impossible to happen. This group of hijackers has a very obvious purpose. They want to take Dr. Norrison's research team to a place in the wilderness. The base is in the wilderness, and the selected targets are members of the Institute. The identity of this group of hijackers has almost been revealed. Lin Keiming took a deep breath and replaced one of the 2 pistols with a magazine full of active bullets. Just when he was about to send a message to other members of the action team, there was a sudden knocking sound outside the bathroom door. "Mr. Lin? Mr. Lin, are you in there?" It was the stewardess Helen's voice. Lin Keiming quickly hid the pistol. I'm here, what's the matter? You've been in there for a long time. Did something go wrong? Is there anything I can do to help you?" Helen asked again. Obviously, the other party has noticed the abnormality. "It's nothing, just a little diarrhea." Lin Keiming pressed the flush button of the toilet twice, then turned on the faucet to deliberately wet his hands, and then opened the bathroom door. However, the moment he opened the door, he knew something was wrong. Helen's eyes crossed his shoulder and rested on the bathroom porthole. Although Lin Keiming has restored the airtight rubber ring to its original position, the traces of being pried cannot be restored unless a brand new rubber ring is replaced. The moment their eyes met, their eyes said everything. The stewardess Helen didn't hesitate. She put her hand directly into her short skirt and pulled out a light gray dagger. This dagger was made of high-strength ceramics. It didn't use any metal in the whole body and would not be caught by the metal detector. What they found, as for the image security scanner, in Lin Keiming's impression, when they arrived at Yong'an the image security scanner at the airport gate seemed to have malfunctioned, and several technicians were taking it apart for repairs. Now that I think about it, it was not a malfunction at all, but man-made sabotage. Lin Keiming blocked Helen's attack with his left hand. The ceramic dagger cut open the sleeve of his uniform, but failed to break through the soft lining worn inside the uniform. At the same time, Lin Keiming had already drawn the pistol from his waist. He put the muzzle of the gun against Helen's abdomen and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Puff puff. The muffled sound of bullets entering the human body was heard, and the satin skirt was soon stained dark brown by the blood. Helen staggered back a few steps, raised her head, and stared with resentment. By Lin Keiming. The next second, several tiny pink fleshy tentacles came out of her nostrils and ears. She opened her mouth and began to vomit. A large amount of rotten internal organs mixed with blood fell to the ground, and there was a fishy smell. The smell instantly filled the bathroom door. Then, more thicker and longer tentacles emerged from her throat. These tentacles entangled and waved with each other, tearing the delicate cherry mouth to the base of her ears. Really? Lin Kaiming was shocked, but fortunately he was prepared. He immediately changed the weapon in his hand to another gun and sent 3 special active ammunition into Helen's body. The active ammunition distributed by the Crisis Management section is enhanced with 16 times the standard dose. Even if it does not hit the core, the toxicity contained in the 3 bullets is enough to kill a corrosive species in the rapid transformation stage. The tentacles that emerged from the 7 orifices of Helen froze, and then began to quickly decay and fester. Lin Kaiming caught the fallen body and dragged it into the bathroom. The other operators of the Crisis Management section are also equipped with active ammunition. It is not difficult for them to kill the corrosion seed, but the difficulty is to protect the researchers on the plane and the plane itself at the same time. At this moment, control of the plane is still in the hands of this group of hijackers. The crew totals 37 people. If each of these 37 people is a container for the seed of corrosion, the situation will be quite difficult. Especially those flight attendants sitting in the first-class cabin. If the remaining 6 flight attendants cannot be killed at the same time before they realize the crisis, those powerless researchers will be in danger. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 624. Yagonactor, Core Power Room, Frontline Supply Base. What's going on? The transport plane taken by the Institute's experts veered off course, Kaylan asked several other people participating in the remote meeting on the screen. According to our judgment, there is a high probability that the transport plane has been hijacked, Schroeder said with a serious face. The situation is not optimistic. Who leads the team responsible for escorting these experts? Kaylan asked again. It's Lin Kaiming, a familiar name came out of Schroeder's mouth. I remember that only you, Lin Kaiming, and professors in the institute have permission to view this news. By the way, how many professors are there surviving in the institute now? There are 6 in total. Except for Dr. Norrison on the plane, the other 5 professors have been controlled by us, Schroeder said, but I am basically certain that the news was not leaked from them. But besides us, there is another group of people who know the news. Schroeder added. Don't stare at me. Yan suddenly panicked and waved his hands repeatedly. Although the transport plane is provided by our family, I can guarantee that whether it is the port or airport staff or the crew, they don't even know the content of the mission or the identity of the passengers. They only know that they are escorting a batch of expensive equipment to Yagonactor, and all other information is kept confidential. Are you sure? Schroeder's tone was very suspicious. I'm sure. The only person who knows about this is the person responsible for the contact. That person is my second uncle. He can't be from a heretical section, Yan said confidently. Yan's second uncle Kaylan has also had several contacts with him. This person has a very high status and prestige within the family, and is almost on an equal footing with the family head. If even a character like him is a pawn planted by a heretical sect, then the entire family is probably inseparable from the heretical sect. If placed in a general TV series or novel, Yan's second uncle might choose to cooperate with external forces such as heretical sects because he is not willing to be just a second in command. But the problem lies in the inheritance system of the family. The most outstanding thing is to select the best person among all the direct descendants to be the next head of the family, and the best among the young people of this generation of the family is not Yan, but Yan's cousin, that is, his second uncle's son. Yan has made it clear in public many times that he has no interest in being the head of the family. He prefers to be a dandy instead of spending all day in the office reviewing documents and files that cannot be completed. His cousin became the head of the family. The next head of the family is almost a certainty. From this point of view, Yan's second uncle had no motive or reason for betrayal. By the way, can Yan contact this Hercules transport plane? Kaylan asked. Unable to contact us, the transport plane unilaterally cut off communication. Yan sighed, I have sent you the list of crew members. To be honest, I don't know who are the traitors. It is very difficult to rescue the plane without landing. We must prepare for the best and worst case scenario, Schroeder said. What's the worst plan? The fat on Yan's face jumped violently. Shooting down the plane, even if it kills these experts, it is better than letting them fall into the hands of a heretical section. The expression on Schroeder's face was very decisive. That is a last resort. Before that, let's find a way to organize a rescue operation, Kaylan said. Kaylan, if you have any ideas, just say it. As long as our family can do it, we will fully cooperate. Yan immediately agreed. He didn't want things to really get to that point. The loss of a Hercules transport plane was probably not even a drop in the bucket for the family, but the lives of those on the plane, that responsibility was not something that the family could. It's affordable, although the family consortium is an unshakable behemoth in the eyes of ordinary people. Only they themselves know that if the people of the Immortal Crew Association want to cleanse the family will not even have a chance to resist. There will be. I just looked through the crew list you sent, and I always feel that, even if the heretical sect wants to place chess pieces in the family group, it is impossible for the entire crew to be theirs. What's more, this operation, it was a temporary decision, and the Hercules transport plane happened to be available. If we happen to encounter a situation where the entire crew was filled with moles, I think we could buy lottery tickets. Kaylan paused and continued, no, even buying a lottery ticket is not such an outrageous thing. After all, it is equivalent to winning 100 million in a lottery with a total prize pool of 5 million, it is simply impossible. The airport, Schroeder suddenly said, contact the airport control panel and ask them to arrange the monitoring equipment of the entire airport. Don't miss any corner. In addition, get the list of all people entering and leaving Yong'an port today. Okay, Yan responded. Chief Schroeder, do you suspect that someone sneaked into the airport and mixed up with the plane? The representative of the security bureau, who had been silent, said. It's not like someone got on the plane. I think the crew was switched, Schroeder said word by word. Package swap? These crew members should be familiar with each other, right? If a stranger sneaks in, he will be recognized immediately, right? The representative of the security bureau asked doubtfully. What if the entire crew are all switched? There are so many planes and airships entering and leaving the airport every day, and the ground staff at the airport may not necessarily know every crew member, Schroeder said. Before the person from the security bureau could say anything else, Yan, who had disappeared from the screen for a few minutes, hurried back and said, the inspection results are out. 6 cameras outside Yong'an port have been vandalized. The monitoring room, the computers inside were also found to have been implanted with Trojans. In addition, the cameras in the bathrooms and locker rooms on the first floor of the airport were also destroyed, and the security inspection equipment at gates 4 and 5 had inexplicable malfunctions. Where's the list of people entering and leaving? I haven't figured it out for a while. Yagonakiter just delivered supplies today. The number of people entering and exiting Yong'an port was not 10,000 but 8,000, wait a minute. News just came from the airport that 3 people are missing. Still haven't found it yet. 3 people? Which 3 people? Kaylan asked. 2 are airport security guards, and 1 is a water supply and drainage engineer hired by the airport. Water supply and drainage engineer? Why, the airport's drainage pipes are also malfunctioning, Schroeder asked. Did these sneak into the airport from the pipeline system? It was the autonomous cleaning robot in the pipeline that got stuck on the track, and then the maintenance robot seemed to have got stuck as well, so we had to start the manual troubleshooting process. But after entering the airport, the engineer named Jimmy Garrigan, he disappeared soon after and no one knew where he went. Is this Jimmy Garrigan from a heretical section? Before the man from the security bureau finished speaking, Yan interrupted him. Well, when Jimmy Garrigan entered the airport, the transport plane had already left Yong'an, Hong Kong. Is this Jimmy here to repair the underground drainage pipes? Kaylan suddenly asked. Yes, Yan nodded. Where is the entrance to the underground drainage pipe? Kaylan asked again. There should be several entrances, but the most commonly used entrances are either in the water room or in the bathroom. Did you just say that the cameras in the bathroom and locker room have been destroyed? Hurry, organize a team of people now, go to the bathroom where the camera was destroyed, and enter the underground pipe from the entrance there. There must be something down there. I'll have someone do it right away. Where is this transport plane now? Kaylan looked at the Security Bureau representative again and asked. The ARC is 1,100 kilometers due north and is still flying north. The First Fleet has sent 2 fighter formations to intercept, however, the other party ignored the warnings issued by the fighter jets. The representative of the Security Bureau made a bitter face. Said, but it's impossible for us to open fire on them without permission from above. The above permission naturally refers to the Immortal Crew Association. Until the Immortal Crew Association nods, neither the Crisis Management Division nor the Security Bureau has the right to shoot down the Hercules transport plane. Is there no other way to stop the plane? Some people have proposed the plan of destroying the aircraft engine and then using a flying mecha to forcibly drag the transport aircraft, but we cannot guarantee whether the hijackers will take extreme actions after the aircraft loses power, such as killing the hostages. But it is a solution, Schroeder added. If Lin Kaiming is not dead yet, with the help of the chaos we created outside, he should have a way to solve the problem from inside the aircraft. The premise is that the strength of the hijacker is lower than that of the operators of the Crisis Management Division, but judging from the clues currently available, the hijacker is most likely a member of a heretical sect, so a parasitic vessel with the seed of erosion is definitely indispensable. Even, the existence of the Black Bishop cannot be ruled out, Kaylan pondered. One bishop in black is enough to eliminate Deputy Chief Lin's entire team. The representative of the Security Bureau also said solemnly, we cannot place our hopes on a person whose life or death is still uncertain. Chief Schroeder, have you contacted Lin Kaiming? Kaylan continued to ask. Schroeder shook his head. The transport plane has turned on the shielding device, and the personal communication equipment they carried has been disabled. At this moment, Yan returned to the screen again. Judging from his panting appearance, it was obvious that he had run all the way back. Kaylan. Your guess is right? I asked someone to check the underground drainage system. Corpses. There are corpses underneath. We found a lot of corpses in the management. Whose body? Kaylan, Schroeder, and the representatives from the Security Bureau suddenly looked at each other and asked. The engineer named Jimmy, and the bodies of the crew members, the entire crew of Class B were killed, Yan shouted breathlessly. That is to say, the entire crew on the current transport plane is disguised by the hijackers, Schroeder said solemnly. Even if there is no Black Bishop among them, with the combat power of Lin Kaiming's team, I'm afraid they won't be able to do it. Optimism. What's more, without their knowledge, the hijackers have absolute initiative. Then what should we do? Apply to the higher UPS. The representative of the Security Bureau stopped talking midway through. The application he mentioned was naturally the action permission he applied for, an action that requires the approval of the Undead Crew Association. Must be the kind of action that will cause large-scale casualties. There is a high chance that what they will end up with will be the wreckage of a plane and dozens of mutilated corpses. Okay, I'll carry out the rescue operation, Kaylan said, suddenly standing up. You go. How do you go? Schroeder was stunned for a moment and asked. Of course I'll take the high-speed fighter of Fleet Zero. I can't fly, Kaylan smiled and said, with the speed of the fighter, we should be able to catch up with the transport plane before it flies over the White Ridge Mountains. Then what? What are you going to do? The representative of the Security Bureau also looked at Kaylan with a puzzled face. The fighter formation of the No. 1 Fleet followed the transport aircraft all the way, but there was nothing we could do against them. Of course, jump on the plane and kill the hijackers inside. At this moment, on the A-136 Hercules transport plane, Lin Kaiming, holding two guns, was squatting in the aisle outside the bathroom, using a cart storing cleaning tools as a cover, and carefully looking into the cabin. Case. There are 6 other stewardesses in first class, 2 sitting on the seat near you and 3 on the side near the cockpit. The 8 crisis management section operators are scattered in every corner of the first-class cabin. If I jump out and shoot now and issue orders to my subordinates, I should be able to cooperate with my subordinates to kill these stewardesses as soon as possible and control them. First class, but the problem is that his subordinates can kill the flight attendants, but they cannot kill the monsters lurking inside them. Although each operator carried active ammunition, the barrels and magazines were still filled with conventional ammunition. Even Lin Kaiming himself only changed the magazines after noticing an abnormality. He had to let his subordinates prepare active ammunition first. Lin Kaiming glanced at his communication equipment. The signal shielding device on the plane had been turned on. If he wanted to convey the news to his subordinates, he had to do it himself. Okay. But if he goes out by himself now, the disappearing Helen will definitely attract the attention of other stewardesses, and maybe the other stewardess will take the lead in attacking. In addition, there are people in the cockpit and cargo bay. Once a battle breaks out, the first-class cabin will be attacked from the front and rear, and will be in a very disadvantageous situation. Although these people do not have firearms, the seed of corrosion in their bodies is a fighting force that Lin Kaiming cannot ignore, especially in a narrow and compact space like an airplane. If they cannot distance themselves, even if it is also difficult to gain an advantage with active ammunition. Moreover, Lin Kaiming cannot squat in this place for too long, otherwise it will also attract the attention of those stewardesses. After all, if he has been killed by Helen, it does not take too much time to hide a body. We can't delay it any longer, we must make a decision quickly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 625. Lin Kaiming thought about it again and again, and finally put away his strength and strode out. He was betting that the other stewardesses would not notice the intersection between him and Helen, and only in this way could he have time to notify other operators and replace the ammunition in the magazine with active bullets. However, as soon as he entered the first-class cabin, another stewardess came up to him and asked, "Mr. Lin, have you seen Helen?" "Helen? Is she that pretty girl just now?" Lin Kaiming's heart tightened, but he remained calm on the surface and replied calmly, "I didn't see it." He originally wanted to say, "Helen entered the women's bathroom, maybe going to the bathroom," but after thinking about it, he still felt that it would be better to just answer that he didn't see it. Anyway, there is a time difference. If the other freshman is confused, go to the bathroom to look for it. Helen's words actually gave Lin Kaiming an opportunity to inform his subordinates. "She just went to the bathroom to look for you." "Did you really not see her?" The stewardess' expression gradually became unnatural. "I really didn't see it, maybe she looked in the wrong place. The toilet in this bathroom was broken. I went to the toilet near the cargo hold. After coming and going, she might have missed me." Lin Kaiming worked hard to make up reasons. However, even he thought these words were outrageous, let alone the stewardess who was already suspicious of him. "Really?" The stewardess suddenly froze, staring straight at Lin Kaiming's waist. Only then did Lin Kaiming notice that there was a piece of fingernail stuck to the hem of his uniform. A blood stain the size of a cover. "Oops," Lin Kaiming sighed secretly in his heart. The pistol loaded with active bullets had already fallen into his hand and was pressed against the flight attendant's lower abdomen. He shouted in a low voice, Don't make a sound. However, the flight attendant did not give in. Instead, she reached out directly to grab the barrel of the gun and shouted loudly, "For the great God!" This group of hijackers were already ready to sacrifice themselves for their faith. What's more, as containers of erosion seeds, their remaining lifespans are numbered. Using death as a threat has no effect on these people at all. Lin Kaiming could only pull the trigger, and while he was shooting, he also shouted, "The crew are all enemies. There are corrosive seeds in their bodies." One group suppresses fire. The second group replaces active ammunition. The corrosive seed in the body of the stewardess had not even had time to enter the critical transformation stage, and the active ammunition injected into the body had already killed it. However, the other operators of the crisis management department did not react so quickly. When one group of operators took out their weapons, the other 5 stewardesses had already taken out the weapons hidden on their bodies and rushed forward. The throats of the 2 operators who were closer were directly slit. The blood spurting from the carotid artery sprayed everywhere. In terms of physical fitness alone, the strength, speed and other attributes of humans parasitized by erosion seeds can probably reach the level of 4th to 5th level enhanced humans. Even if they have not received formal fighting training, they can still rely on their strength in close combat. The attribute advantage suppresses these ordinary operators of the crisis management department. The 2 stewardesses who succeeded in the sneak attack conveniently picked up the weapons of the sacrificial operators. Using the seats as cover, they fired in the direction of Lin Kaiming. Fortunately, the weapons carried by the crisis management officers on this trip were all used. Automatic pistols with 9mm pistol bullets or micro-ramps have poor penetration. Lin Kaiming directly blocked the stewardess he shot dead in front of him and blocked most of the bullets. Only one bullet grazed his right leg, leaving a shallow white mark on the soft lining. The other 3 stewardesses were relatively unlucky, or rather far away. They were killed by the crisis management department's operators before they rushed towards them. Before the corrosion seeds in their bodies could break out, they were immediately replenished by the second group of operators who had changed their bullets. The situation suddenly became 7 versus 2, and he successfully distanced himself from the opponent. For Lin Kaiming, this should be considered an ideal situation. At the same time, he also noticed something: when the 2 stewardesses who had grabbed the gun shot at him, they clearly avoided the researchers in the center of the first-class cabin. Obviously, they did not do it as a last resort. They will not choose to remove votes. After all, the main target of their hijacking operation was these valuable researchers. If these people died, their mission would have failed. Similarly, for ARC, if the researchers cannot be rescued, even if the hijackers are completely wiped out, it will not be considered a victory. This is a lose-lose outcome that both parties are trying to avoid as much as possible. All researchers, squat down. Lie down on your seats and don't move. Don't poke your head out and don't make a sound, Lin Kaiming shouted. Don't get involved in the battle. The crisis management department will do its best to ensure your personal safety. He raised his hand and used the pistol loaded with ordinary bullets to fire several shots at the seats where the 2 stewardesses were hiding. However, the 9mm caliber pistol could not penetrate the metal seat back and could only penetrate the surface of the seat. There are a few inconspicuous gun holes left on the polymer shell. Close the cabin door, lock it, and don't let the enemies outside come in. Remember, the entire crew, everyone, is the enemy, Lin Kaiming shouted again. Most of the hijackers gathered in the cargo hold. If they let this group of people enter the first-class cabin, the hard-won advantage of the crisis management department will instantly turn into a disadvantage. The 2 operators immediately stood up and rushed toward the door leading to the cargo hold, but at the same time, the 2 stewardesses poked out their guns and fired randomly in the direction of the door. Both operators were wearing body armor, but the body armor could only protect the torso. One of them was luckier, but he only received a few shots in the thigh and butt and fell to the ground. The other was less lucky. He was shot through the throat by a bullet and died suddenly on the spot. You suppress the fire, and I'll close the door. Lin Kaiming pulled the injured operator behind the seat, and then rushed out himself. He lowered his head, covered his face with his arms, and rushed to the cabin door quickly. Bullets also hit him, but they were all blocked by the soft-lined jacket. At best, it was equivalent to a professional boxer punching him hard several times. For Lin Kaiming, who is an enhanced person, these punches can only cause a little stiffness in the body, not even minor injuries. It's a pity that this kind of full-body lined soft armor is expensive to make and has extremely low-cost performance. The production price of one piece is enough to buy half a small shield generator, but its defensive power can only be used to block pistol bullets and sharp weapons. The only advantage is that it is light, so the output is very small, so even members of the Crisis Management Department are only qualified to be equipped with captain level or above members. The moment he closed the hatch, Lin Kaiming saw a group of people rushing out of the cargo passage. Fortunately, he had already pulled the handle and locked the hatch before these people rushed forward. The quality of the hatch of the Hercules transport aircraft is pretty good. Without a laser cutter, it would be difficult to break it open by force alone. Lin Kaiming breathed a sigh of relief, rolled on the spot, and ducked back behind the seat. As for the door on the side of the cockpit, he wasn't too worried. There were only 2 people in the cockpit, and at most one person could come to support the first-class cabin. Moreover, the passage between the cockpit and the first-class cabin has almost no cover, and the passage entrance can be blocked very easily with just a gun. "Are there any throwing objects?" Lin Kaiming asked in a low voice to a subordinate not far away. The operator shook his head with a grimace and said, "Deputy Section Chief, who would bring projectiles for this kind of mission? Even non-lethal projectiles, we can't use them in such a closed space." Lin Kaiming also knew what this operator meant. Things like shock bombs would also be affected at this distance. The same was true for smoke bombs. Without a thermal imaging sight, they would only create troubled waters for the opponent. Opportunity. Otherwise, several of us would take turns to use fire suppression, and then advance alternately. When we rounded the corner, several of us would burst out at the same time, using conventional bullets and active bullets to shoot at the enemies behind the bunker. There were only 2 of them, so there's no way to show your head and fight back, said an operator. But their marksmanship is very good. They are obviously not ordinary heretical sect members. Another operator shook his head repeatedly. You all saw those few shots just now. They didn't stick their heads out, and they didn't even lift their hands from the cover. After exposure, just exposing a muzzle can block the area at the cabin door. To be able to do this requires high proficiency in firearms and a sense of space. Even if it is safe, not everyone in the Bureau's field agents can do it. According to your plan, the brothers who are at the front will probably be beaten directly into a sieve. Use this. Lin Kaiming looked around. Suddenly his eyes lit up, and he pulled the trolley parked by the wall over. This is the cart that Helen used before. The cart is entirely made of metal, and there are thick insulation cabinets and disinfection cabinets inside. The bulletproof performance is simply top-notch, let alone 9mm pistol bullets. Even the 10mm full-power bullet of the 0-1 rifle may not be able to penetrate this cart. You are responsible for pushing the cart. Remember to crouch forward and don't expose your head. Lin Kaiming ordered an operator. I will follow you, and the others will be responsible for fire suppression. Understood, the operator nodded, and using the cover of the seat, he ducked over and grabbed the armrest of the cart. Let's go. Lin Kaiming gave the order, and he pushed the cart in a squatting position and began to move slowly along the aisle between the seats. Lin Kaiming hunched over and followed closely behind him. Just when the cart was about to reach the row of seats where the 2 stewardesses were hiding, Lin Kaiming pushed the operator in front of him to the ground, then jumped over his head, holding guns in both hands, pointing at the operator. Behind the row of seats, the trigger was pulled continuously. The screams and gunshots were mixed together. Lin Kaiming, who jumped out, also received many shots, but fortunately most of them were blocked by the soft armor. The only shot that hurt him was on his. There was just a shallow trace of blood on his cheek. As for the two stewardesses, they were shot more than a dozen times and were killed on the spot along with the seeds of erosion in their bodies. Even after Lin Kaiming stood still, he shot each person twice with the gun loaded with active bullets. As a result, the first-class cabin was completely emptied. "You two, come here and guard the passage to the cockpit. You go and help the injured person treat their wounds." After Lin Kaiming simply assigned tasks to his subordinates, he hurried to the other end of the first-class cabin, the gang of slaves. The hijackers coming from the direction of the cargo bay were still banging on the door, but within a few seconds, the sound of banging on the door stopped, which gave Lin Kaiming an unpleasant premonition. He glanced at the porthole and saw several guys in crew support uniforms slowly pushing a white machine toward the cabin door. This machine has a heavy base, and above the base is a universal mechanical arm that can move automatically. At the front end of the mechanical arm, there is a launching device like a gun barrel. Behind this equipment, there is a cooling device that is as tall as a person. Although Lin Kaiming does not recognize the name of this equipment, he still recognizes the cooling device. Equipment that can use this kind of device. He quickly looked through the list of equipment he was carrying, and was surprised to find that a piece of equipment on the list called a laser scalpel had the exact same shape as the thing pushed over by the hijackers. The laser scalpel, as the name suggests, is a laser-emitting device. Although the output power of the laser will be controlled within a small range when used for dissection, if the limiter is released, the power of this thing is absolutely no less than a cluster laser weapon installed on a fighter jet. After all, the original target of this thing is the kind of rough-skinned and thick-fleshed indigenous creature that cannot even be penetrated by anti-material weapons. These hijackers, they want to use this laser scalpel to cut open the door. Although the air conditioner was still on in the first-class cabin and the temperature was controlled at a pleasant 25 degrees Celsius, Lin Kaiming's back was instantly wet with cold sweat. If this group of people cut open the cabin door, just by the cover of these rows of seats could not stop their attack at all. What's more, the crisis management section operators are running out of active ammunition. The total number of active ammunition they carry is less than 100 rounds at most, while the remaining crew members still have 30 rounds. Multiple people. It takes at least 3 rounds of active ammunition to kill a corrosion seed. 100 rounds of bullets are used against more than 30 containers. They must make sure all the bullets are missed. If someone misses the target, they will eventually face there are even several monsters that cannot be killed with conventional bullets. P.S. Thanks to us who won 14 for the 3,000 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 627. We must find a way to destroy this laser scalpel. As a high-precision scientific research equipment, the laser scalpel itself, especially the laser-emitting component, is actually very fragile. It does not take much effort to smash it. But the problem is, how can Lin Kaiming and the others destroy the laser scalpel outside without opening the hatch? Lin Kaiming's first reaction was the porthole on the hatch. This piece of porthole glass is fixed to the hatch with expansion bolts. Compared with the one-piece hatch casting, this piece of glass is the only piece of glass on the entire door. Weak point: with the equipment held by Lin Kaiming's team, they can completely dismantle the laser scalpel before the group of hijackers outside adjust it. Then they only need to shoot outside through this window, and they can easily destroy the laser scalpel that is close at hand. But on second thought, Lin Kaiming immediately rejected the idea. The porthole on the hatch is in the shape of a nearly rectangular oval, about 25 centimeters high and less than 20 centimeters wide, which is nearly twice as small as the porthole on the fuselage that connects to the outside. Even those who have practiced bone shrinking skills may not be able to get through such a small opening, let alone the group of hijackers outside. But just because people can't get through it doesn't mean that the seed of erosion in their bodies can't get through. the body of the seat of erosion is a soft-bodied creature similar to an octopus. According to the experimental records of the Institute, the volume and weight of one head are an adult man's mature erosion can easily pass through a pipe the size of a bowl. The only thing that can limit their deformation is the diameter of the hard core in the body. As for the erosion seeds that have just entered the mature stage from the rapid transformation stage, the core is about the same size as an egg. With the size of this porthole, it is enough for more than a dozen erosion seeds to get in at the same time. The firepower of Linkheiming and the others was completely insufficient to deal with the attack launched by more than a dozen erosion seeds. This fragile defense line would collapse in an instant. If they remove the porthole glass now, they will be providing convenience to this group of hijackers. This approach won't work. Linkheiming breathed in the blood-smelling air in the first-class cabin, his brain running rapidly. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have fallen into a misunderstanding. He shouldn't think about how to intercept the hijackers from the direction of the cargo bay. Even if he succeeded in keeping them out, it would only be a temporary solution rather than a permanent solution. Even if they can hold on to the first-class cabin, the rescue team outside the plane may not be able to rescue them safely. If you want to completely solve the hijacking incident, you should first find a way to regain control of the plane. They, who are inside the aircraft, are the key to the entire rescue operation. They have advantages that external rescuers do not have. Now they have taken control of the first-class cabin and separated the cockpit and cargo hold. Although this separation is only temporary, it is enough for them to do a lot of things during this time. On the other side of the cockpit, there were only two hijackers pretending to be pilots. In terms of combat power and number of people, the Crisis Management Department had an absolute advantage. Linkheiming couldn't help but want to slap himself on the ear, probably because of the intense overtime work these days. His brain was damaged, and he didn't even think about such a simple thing. From the beginning, he should have focused on the key points. It's better to put it in control of the plane. Two groups stay in the first-class cabin. If the direction of the cargo compartment is breached, try to delay as much time as possible. One group, follow me, and we will get the cockpit back, Linkheiming shouted. Sir, the radar has detected the target. Right below us. The man driving the fighter jet was Ian's old acquaintance and one of the two pilots on the previous transport plane who was implicated in the scandal. At this moment, he was holding the control stick of the plane tightly with both hands, staring closely at the radar screen directly ahead, and lowering the altitude of the plane bit by bit. In the entire Zero fleet, his driving skills are considered to be among the best. Otherwise, it would not be his turn to fly a plane for an important person like Kaylan. I saw it too. Kaylan stood on the passenger seat, holding the cockpit cover with both hands, pressing his face against the cabin glass, looking down. It's very close, the visual distance is about less than 300 meters. According to the information sent by the fighter formation dispatched by the First Fleet, the target has been flying due north and has not changed its course, said the pilot captain. Actually, I really want to pursue them. Maybe I can find an important stronghold of a heretical section. But I'm afraid that the other party has already prepared, and it will be difficult to save people by then, Kaylan said. Actually, it's quite difficult to save people in this situation. The pilot captain muttered quietly. Keep the course consistent with the target, shorten the distance as much as possible, and notify the First Fleet fighter formation following so that they are ready to respond at any time. Kaylan glanced at the landscape directly below, which was a vast plain. According to his plan, the worst scenario is to completely destroy the transport plane during the fight with the hijackers. In this way, the researchers on the plane will have to parachute to escape. If it falls on the planes, that's fine. But if it flies a little further forward and enters the intersection of the White Ridge Mountains and the Yangshuang Mountains, the search and rescue difficulty will be greatly increased. Relative distance, 170 meters, relative speed, 0. The pilot captain said, the other party's radar should have discovered us, but they don't seem to have taken any countermeasures. Maybe they are holding important hostages in their hands and they think we will not attack them, so they are confident, Kaylan said. Can we get any closer? I'll give it a try. The pilot captain nodded and pressed the joystick in his hand slightly to control the fighter jet to keep getting closer to the Hercules transport aircraft below. Relative distance, 25 meters, 23 meters, 20 meters, relative speed, 0, we can't get any closer. At this distance, as long as the hands of the other pilot and I shake a little, the two planes will collide directly. I remember during aerobatic performances, wasn't the minimum distance between flight formations only a few meters? Kaylan asked. Sir, you also know that it was a stunt. Those pilots have been partners with each other for decades. The team members are more trustworthy to them than their right and left hands, and the pilot of the plane below, I don't even know if he has a formal pilot license, so I definitely don't dare to take this risk. The pilot captain paused and then added, of course, if that guy from Mesa is driving the transport plane below, I would dare to stay within 5 meters. The Mesa in his mouth refers to the lieutenant pilot who was in the co-pilot seat of the transport plane. Counting the time in the Zero Fleet, the two have been partners for exactly 10 years. 16 meters, this is the limit distance that I can react in time to avoid, the pilot captain said. Sir, are you really planning to just jump into a gang? Yes, Kaylan patted the pilot's shoulder. Get ready, I'm going to open the hatch. Understood. The pilot captain grabbed the oxygen mask and placed it on his face. He raised his left hand and gave Kaylan a thumbs up. Immediately afterwards, Kaylan opened the hatch of the cockpit. A strong stream of air suddenly hit his face, hitting the raised hatch cover with a constant crisp sound. Kaylan tightly grasped the ring on the edge of the cockpit to prevent his whole body from being pulled out by this strong airflow. It was not the first time for Kaylan to jump gangs at high altitudes and at high speeds, but before this time, he had done this in computer games. Even in virtual games, such difficult operations cannot be completed 100% every time. The reason Kaylan dared to do this was that even if he failed to jump to the gang, he could still make another hard landing with his living armor at this height, unless he crashed directly into the air intake of the transport plane the moment he jumped. Then we can only try to see whether the active armor is stronger, or the high-speed rotating alloy blades in the transport aircraft's air inlet are stronger. 3, 2, 1. Kaylan recited 3 numbers silently in his mind, and then jumped. The moment he left the cockpit of the fighter jet, countless bright red blood had already drilled out from every pore on his body, and in the blink of an eye, a set of strange-looking armor was formed on his body. Hercules transport aircraft, interior, first-class cabin. Linkheiming and his men were about to raid the cockpit when they suddenly heard a loud bang from above the plane. With the loud noise, the entire Hercules transport plane seemed to shake slightly. What's going on? Linkheiming was stunned for a moment and looked up at the top of the plane. Deputy Section Chief, could it be that the people above have decided to shoot us down? An operator from the Crisis Management Department said with a worried look. No, Linkheiming shook his head. If the higher UPS decided to shoot down this plane, we would probably have crashed by now. Linkheiming is very aware of the firepower configuration of the active fighter jets in ARC's main fleet. The cluster laser cannon only needs one shot to disintegrate a transport aircraft without an energy shield. Although the Hercules is called a heavy transport aircraft, but this heavy refers to its powerful transport capacity, and does not mean how thick the armor is. I feel like something hit the plane, another older and more experienced crisis management officer said. Listening to the sound, the location of the impact seems to be in the direction of the cargo bay. Direction of the cargo hold. Linkheiming's heart tightened. Although his reason told him that what he should do now was to seize the time and occupy the cockpit before the first-class door was cut open, but for some reason, he always felt a hard feeling in his heart. The suppressed impulse was to let him find out. His intuition told him that this loud noise might be the key to breaking the situation, And his intuition was always accurate. You will lead the team. After breaking into the cockpit, no matter whether the opponent resists or not, they will be killed. Remember to use active ammunition to reload the gun. There is no need to save bullets. Lin Kaiming patted the older operator and said. What about you, Deputy Section Chief? I'll go over and take a look. With that said, Lin Kaiming got up and ran towards the cargo hold. And when he rushed to the cabin door, he happened to see the death of the last hijacker through the porthole. An arm completely covered under the blood-red armor pierced the hijacker's chest from behind. With the sharp claws grabbed a core wrapped in blood and minced flesh. The next second, this claw directly crushed the core. As for the drop of bright red blood-like substance in the core, it was sucked up by several small tentacles that suddenly appeared on the surface of the blood-colored armor. Clean and tidy. Those tiny tentacles appeared and disappeared so fast that Lin Kaiming had hallucinations. He was completely unsure whether what he just saw was real or just a figment of his mind. The hijacker, whose chest was penetrated, fell to the floor with a pop, revealing the figure standing behind him. The strange-looking bloody armor exuded a strong ominous aura. Although Lin Kaiming knew that the other party was probably not his enemy, driven by instinct, he just wanted to stay as far away from the armor as possible. What made him feel fearful and resistant was not the person wearing the armor, but the armor itself. Although he had never seen this thing, his intuition told him that this armor was alive and had vitality. Although he didn't know how it was tamed by the wearer. If this thing got out of control, it would cause an unimaginable disaster. The danger level of this armor is even higher than that of SP-level mutants. Perhaps, only the true form of the meme, or an existence like the prehistoric species can suppress it, Lin Kaiming thought. Of course, if he had witnessed the scene that day when Kaylan was wearing living armor and tearing Seraphim apart, he probably wouldn't think so. Lin Kaiming did not know the existence of the living armor, let alone the connection between it and Kaylan. As for the officers and soldiers who had seen Kaylan in this state with their own eyes, they were all issued the highest level of silence order to ensure that the information was not disclosed. Will be leaked. Who are you? Lin Kaiming held the pistol tightly with both hands, aimed at the uninvited guest on the other side through the door panel, and asked in a dry voice. Ah, it's Deputy Section Chief Lin. Long time no see. The bloody armor raised his hand and waved towards the porthole. Although the sound coming from inside the armor seemed a bit dull, Lin Kaiming was no stranger to this sound. Kaylan. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 628. It's me, I forgot to take off the visor, Kaylan said, while taking back the visor covering his face, revealing his original face. I heard that I was kidnapped, so I rushed over. Come here, how did you get in? Lin Kaiming was stunned for a moment, and his eyes subconsciously glanced above his head. Jumping gangs, Kaylan replied casually. Xiao, jumping gang. Lin Kaiming was stunned again. Is it the jumping gang? I understand. Then what other explanation is there for the word jump gang? Kaylan shrugged. What about that loud noise just now? I smashed it out. To be honest, this transport plane is like a thin-skinned and big stuffed bun. It jumped over at such a short distance. Logically speaking, the impact force shouldn't be very strong. But in the end, the outer shell was still directly damaged by me. It was smashed through, and the whole person fell into the spare cargo hold on the upper level. Fortunately, no important equipment was hit, Kaylan said. As a heavy transport aircraft, the internal structure of the Hercules is divided into 3 layers, upper, middle and lower. The first-class cabin, passenger cabin, and main cargo hold are in the middle layer. The upper layer is a spare cargo hold used to store various sundries and emergency equipment. The lowest level is the vehicle compartment used to transport vehicles. As for the cockpit, it is sandwiched between the middle layer and the upper layer, and is a completely independent space. Are you okay? Lin Kaiming said as he opened the hatch. He did not doubt the authenticity of the other party's identity, even if this K-Lan was fake. With his ability, he wanted to. It only takes a matter of minutes to tear open the hatch, and Lin Kaiming and others can't stop it at all. It should be fine. K-Lan tried to move the joints of his neck and limbs. The barbs and thorns on the bloody armor rubbed and collided with each other, making a heartbreaking sound. Anyway, the bones are not broken. Lin Kaiming. By the way, is the cockpit still under the control of the hijackers? K-Lan asked. Yes. Lin Kaiming's expression returned to seriousness and he nodded. I have sent a team of operators to the cockpit. We should be able to regain control of the plane soon. I'm afraid it's not that simple. K-Lan shook his head. Why do you say that? Lin Kaiming's face twitched slightly, and he suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. I entered the plane from the top spare cargo compartment and fought my way down. I killed a total of 21 hijackers, plus you, the 6 flight attendants in the first class. Oh, by the way, I just caught a glimpse of the bathroom. There is also a body of a stewardess, which is also a container. The corrosive seeds in her body should have entered a period of rapid transformation and there are signs of breaking out of the body, but she was killed in the process. Is it you who did it? Lin Kaiming nodded, but the look on his face became more solemn. There are 36 people in the entire B-class crew. In order to ensure that there is no deviation in the number of people, there should be at least 36 hijackers. Now we have killed 28 people, excluding those in the cockpit who are controlling the plane. There are 6 people left, they are gone. K-Lan said. When you boarded the plane, did you notice how many people were in the cockpit? No. Lin Kaiming shook his head. Oh, by the way, there is one more thing I have to tell you. K-Lan continued. In the spare cargo hold above, I found a lot of empty boxes with foam sponges inside. Although I can't be sure, I have to said, the inner space of these boxes is just enough for one person. That is to say, the number of hijackers on the plane may not be more than 36. No, I have to call the first group back quickly. At this moment, a burst of intense gunfire suddenly came from the direction of the cockpit. Although crew members are in principle not allowed to carry weapons on board, even if it is a civilian aircraft, there will always be a few boxes of folding submachine guns like FMG-9 stuffed in the hidden compartment of the cockpit as a self-defense weapon for the crew. After all, this is Alpha Planet, not the Earth. Any unexpected situation is likely to happen in the wilderness. It is impossible not to equip the crew with weapons at all. As for this type of self-defense weapon that cannot even penetrate body armor, in the event of an accident it's hard to say whether we can provide help to the crew when the situation arises. No, this gunshot is wrong. Lin Kaiming shook his head repeatedly. I also heard that these are not 9mm submachine gun bullets. It sounds like there are at least 4 Type 01 assault rifles and a team light machine gun. This shouldn't be the equipment you brought, right? K-Lan looked at it to Lin Kaiming. No. Lin Kaiming shook his head and said, we are traveling lightly on this mission. We didn't bring anything like this. A group, I'm afraid it's already in danger. The gunshots only lasted for a few seconds and then stopped, and then there was no more movement from the direction of the cockpit. You guys keep an eye on these researchers, I'll go over and take a look. After K-Lan finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards the passage connecting the first-class cabin and the cockpit. Although the first-class cabin is located at the nose of the plane, it is actually nearly 30 meters away from the cockpit in a straight line. Coupled with the zigzag structure inside, the actual distance is almost 100 meters. In this space, there are too many places where ambush can be set up. K-Lan did not take the gun handed over by Lin Kaiming and got into the aisle alone. The other end of the first-class cabin is where the crew rests. The bunks embedded in the wall maximize the use of the narrow space on both sides of the aisle. Several trolley suitcases are lying in the aisle, most of which are used by people. It was opened with rough means, and the women's personal belongings inside were scattered everywhere. K-Lan could even smell the rich fragrance of the broken perfume bottle in the air. Kaylan glanced at the items in the box. This should have been done by the operators in the group who just passed by. After all, the entire crew were hijackers, and no one knew if they were also hidden in the luggage they brought. If you are carrying some dangerous items, it is reasonable to check them. Kaylan didn't waste too much time on such trivial matters. He stepped over the trolley box and continued walking forward. Further forward, there was a bathroom exclusively for crew members. Kaylan had no intention of going in, but when he walked past the bathroom door, he heard a rapid heartbeat inside. When the active armor is activated, Kaylan's 5 senses will also be greatly enhanced. Although his hearing is not known to be as abnormal as Akira Asano's, it can be considered extremely sharp compared to ordinary people. Is there an ambush inside? Are they hijackers? Kaylan thought for a while, then kicked the bathroom door open, then picked up a high-heeled shoe that fell on the ground and threw it in. The high heels hit the mirror on the opposite wall, and the tempered glass mirror suddenly turned into countless soybean-sized particles and exploded, but even so, the person hiding in the bathroom did not take any countermeasures. It's just that the frequency of the heartbeat has become more rapid. People inside, come out, Kaylan shouted coldly. No respond. Kaylan took a deep breath, walked quickly in, and stopped in front of the innermost compartment. The sound of heartbeat came from this compartment. With a wave of his sharp claws, the polymer compartment door was cut open, and a trembling figure curled up was immediately exposed in front of Kaylan's eyes. This is a young woman in her early 20s, wearing only underwear and a pair of pantyhose, with long, messy chestnut curly hair hanging around her shoulders. Her hands were tied behind her back with self-locking plastic ties, and there were even blood blisters on her wrists. A ball of something like shorts was blocked in her mouth, preventing her from making any sound. Of course, it's also possible that she didn't dare to make a sound at all. Are you a crew member on this plane? Kaylan remembered clearly. After Yayan sent people to the sewers to count the bodies, he found that the entire B-class was not wiped out, and the bodies of 2 people were not found. One is Lawrence, the captain of this plane, and the other is Nozomi Longchuan from the flight attendant service team. The young woman who was tied up in the bathroom in front of her seemed to be an Asian from her appearance and physical features. Kaylan's heart moved, and she tore off the stuff in her mouth and asked, "Are you Nozomi Longchuan?" Who knew that this woman not only didn't answer, but closed her eyes tightly anyway, huddled up and sobbed softly. Kaylan suddenly realized that his current appearance might have frightened the other party. In terms of visual shock alone, the active armor was quite strong, especially the dense spikes on the surface of the armor, which made him look like someone now. Like an unknown humanoid monster. He had no choice but to remove the armor from her upper body, then lifted the woman up from the ground and said word by word, "I am a rescue worker sent by ARC. If you are the original crew of this Hercules transport plane, then please cooperate with my actions. The entire plane is still in danger. If the rescue operation fails, we can only take the final plan. The final plan, of course, is to shoot down the plane." The other party should be able to understand this even without explaining it. With Kaylan's help, the woman managed to stand still against the wall of the cubicle. She opened her eyes slightly and glanced at Kaylan timidly. After discovering that the monster just now was actually a human, this woman then he breathed a sigh of relief, nodded to Kaylan and said, "Well, I am, Longchuan Nozomi." "Were you detained here by those hijackers?" Kaylan asked. Longchuan Nozomi nodded again. "Although I really want to know how the entire crew was switched, time does not allow it now, so I will go straight to the point and ask a few key questions." Kaylan grabbed Longchuan Nozomi's shoulders and said, "The hijackers have how many people are there?" "There is no obvious leader among them." "Is Lawrence, the captain of this plane, still alive?" I don't know how many of them there are." Longchuan Nozomi replied tremblingly, "I was attacked in the locker room, my colleagues were killed by them, but they didn't kill me." Instead, they stuffed me into a box, and when I was released, I was already on the plane. They arrested you to obtain information about this plane, right? Kaylan asked again. Nozomi Longchuan nodded again. They asked us a lot of things in the locker room. After we answered, they took action. The other party's answer was quite different from what Kaylan expected. As for why Longchuan Zaime came back alive, it was probably because the other party was afraid of any omissions, so he kept one alive with him. I don't know how many there are, maybe 20 or more, or even more. I don't know if Captain Lawrence is still alive. Don't be nervous, relax, Kaylan said patiently. Recall carefully whether there is a character among them who gives orders. Everyone else needs to obey his orders. Are there any of the people who attacked you? Such a person? It seems that the person who asked us is. Longchuan Nozomi stuttered. That was a young man. After he asked someone, he would kill someone. My colleagues were all killed by him. So what did the other hijackers call this guy? They think they called him Bishop. Bishop. Kaylan was stunned. Although this is indeed a normal name, when used as an English word, it has another meaning. Bishop, Bishop. Damn it, there really is a black bishop on this plane. P.S. Thanks to for the reward of 601 starting coins, thanks to book friend 1610020209499906 for the reward of 100 starting coins. P.P.S. Yesterday's plot. Some book friends said there was a problem. The elite characters in the crisis management department should not be so vigilant. There is a suspicion of forcibly reducing their intelligence in order to promote the plot. Here Enkin wants to scream that he is wronged. I am writing I had this concern during this period, so in order to make the plot as reasonable as possible, I have focused on describing the fatigue and sleepiness of Lin Kaiming and other crisis management officers, just to make this part of the plot more natural. Even if a person is enhanced, only the body's functions are enhanced. As the most sophisticated brain in the human body, even with ARC's technological level, it is still within the restricted area of transformation. I have mentioned this many times in the previous article. And if a normal person works all night at high intensity for a week and relies solely on drugs to support his energy, no matter how elite or awesome he is, his brain's reaction will become sluggish. When I was in college, I once had the desperate experience of staying in an internet cafe for 2 consecutive nights on weekends. When I went back to class on Monday, I felt as if I was sleepwalking. The teacher was talking in a fog and I couldn't understand it. Besides, everyone in the crisis management department has not had a good rest for almost a month since the meme incident ended, so I personally think this should not be considered a forced intelligence. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 629. But at the moment when Kaylan was distracted, Longchuan Nozomi, who was still leaning on the partition and shaky, suddenly fell into his arms, and her hands tied up with self-locking straps also. Instantly he broke free from the restraints and clung tightly to Kei-Ian's shoulders. Her mouth opened far beyond the limit of ordinary people, and she grinned from the corners of her mouth to the base of her ears. It looked like she had pulled the top half of her head and turned it backwards, and then, a large mass of bloody tentacles emerged from her throat. It spurted out and directly covered Kei-Ian's face. At the same time, Kei-Ian's arms had penetrated Longchuan Zaime's chest, tearing the container apart. The corrosive seed that had escaped its shackles had crawled onto Kei-Ian's head. This was a corrosive seed that had just entered the stage of rapid transformation and was not yet fully mature. It looked like a severely deformed octopus. Likewise, a large amount of fragmented tissue from the container is adhered to the translucent tentacles, and inside is a mass of dark red mist-like substance that looks like blood. There are hundreds of tentacles growing out of this corrosive seed, tightly wrapped around Kei-Ian's body, These tentacles look soft, but are actually extremely tough. They are on Ian's shoulders and outside of his arms. At other parts, the tight tentacles have cut the skin and sunk deeply into the flesh. But there was no look of pain on Ian's face. For him, after experiencing the pain of living armor fusion, his body's pain tolerance threshold has been raised to a level that is unimaginable for ordinary people. The attack of the seed of erosion did not stop. It seemed to want to drill its tentacles into Ian's 7 orifices. At this moment, a blood-colored film suddenly appeared, but the seed of erosion and Ian's body were completely isolated. The next second, Ian's upper body exploded into a red sea urchin. Countless blood-red spikes instantly penetrated the flexible soft body of the seed of erosion, stringing together hundreds of tentacles. The blood mist flowing and churning inside the tentacles was immediately absorbed by the red spikes. Then, the core that was also penetrated by the spikes split into several petals and gradually merged with the soft flesh. Together. In less than half a minute, the corrosion seed in the rapid transformation stage had turned into a pool of transparent pus, flowing down from the surface of the living armor and dripping on the tiled floor of the bathroom. Despite having close contact with the seed of erosion, Kaylan was not infected by the cells of the seed of erosion. Not only was he not infected, but he also used the spikes of the active armor to absorb the core of the seed of erosion. That drop of blood of the true God. If the memory left by the stone tablet to Kaylan is correct, then there should be a drop of blood from the great God in the core of every erosion seed. Of course, those who can enjoy this kind of treatment should refer to the first batch of seeds of corrosion was born, but the final outcome of the first batch of seeds of corrosion was not mentioned in the memory fragments. They may have gained unparalleled power because of the blood of the true God, or they may not be able to withstand this power and die quickly after they are born, but no matter what the outcome is, one thing can be confirmed: as of now so far, humans have not had any interaction with this kind of erosion. Kaylan felt that it might be a completely different species from the known erosion species. If he had to give it a name according to the current naming rules, Kaylan might call them native species. Compared with the original species, these current eroded species are undoubtedly the product of compromise. They are defective products that can be produced in unlimited quantities. The blood of the true God in their bodies is not even a diluted version, at best. They can only be regarded as imitations. Kaylan couldn't help but think of synthetic diamonds, but then he thought about it. Synthetic diamonds can at least completely replace natural diamonds in the industrial field, and these imitations of God's blood are estimated to be thousands of dollars less than the real ones. Not even a fraction of the energy. Complaints are complaints. This drop of mass production version of the true God's blood in the core is still the source of power for the entire corrosion seed. The active armor on Ian's body seems to like it very much. When it just slaughtered the hijackers, it absorbed all the blood of the pseudo-gods from the corrosive seeds. Every time it absorbed a portion, the armor's own blood both activity and strength will be slightly enhanced. This enhancement is so weak that it is almost negligible, but Kaylan can still clearly feel that the active armor can grow by absorbing this thing. One thing that made him worried was that, by absorbing the blood of the false god, it was the armor itself that grew, not him. Will there come a day when mass production triggers a qualitative change, and the active armor turns against the guest and seizes control of the body? Kaylan didn't dare to think about it, but the idea of separating the armor became more determined in his heart. If given the chance, he must take off this armor. It is just a tool, and tools should not be alive. After coming out of the bathroom, Kaylan only advanced less than 10 meters. He pushed open an ajar door full of bullet marks, and the area where the gunfight just broke out came into his sight. This was a straight passage with almost no cover. Several corpses wearing Crisis Management Department uniforms fell to the ground in a mess, and sticky blood flowed from a few meters away to Ian's feet. These Crisis Management Department operators were all covered with bullet holes from front to back, and some of them were even beaten into pieces. From this scene, we can know that these people should have died from automatic weapons. Under intensive shooting, in this kind of terrain, only one heavy machine gun can seal the entire passage. Unless there is a heavy bulletproof shield or heavy powered armor at the front to open the way, no matter how much more weapons are invested, human hands are just equivalent to throwing people into a meat grinder. I must have heard wrong just now. These people not only have light machine guns, they even have half-inch caliber truck-mounted heavy machine guns. How on earth did they transport such big guys to the plane? Kaylan looked towards the end of the passage. The lights in the entire passage had been extinguished, and it was pitch black. He could only vaguely see the walls on both sides of the passage, and even the corpses of the operators a little further away could only be seen. A vague outline remains. Kaylan noticed that there was a small tactical bright flashlight lying in the thick pool of blood. Apparently, this group of crisis management officers subconsciously turned on the lighting equipment when they entered this unlit passage. However, what they didn't expect was that the light source in the dark environment made them the most conspicuous target. Of course, they did not expect that the enemy would deploy so many troops in the cockpit, and even equip them with heavy firepower that they did not have. It seems like we have to let Yayan check the people under his command. Kaylan thought in his mind. To be able to bring so many boxes containing weapons into the airport, there must be one or several people in the Ye family consortium. High-ranking moles and pawns like Long Chuan Nozomi seem a bit insignificant at this time. The 12.7mm machine gun bullet, should the active armor be able to block it, right, Kaylan muttered in his heart. Those horrific corpses on the ground were the masterpieces of that heavy machine gun. If this thing was equipped with depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets, and can even penetrate the side armor of some light armored vehicles, it would be nice to have a heavy shield. Kaylan tried to imagine himself holding a shield, but just as he was braining, the active armor on his body suddenly began to flow, converging towards his forearm little by little. At first, it was an arm shield only the size of a palm. Later, the arm shield the size of a palm turned into a round shield that was enough to protect K-Ian's upper body. Then, the round shield gradually elongated and expanded to be able to protect K-Ian's upper body. The entire body is blocked by the area behind the shield. The thickness of this huge blood-colored shield was about a palm's width. As a price, all the armor on K-Ian's body was reduced to a thin shell, and most of the blood was condensed on this shield. Above. This shield is not solid. During the process of its formation, Kaylan clearly saw the composite sandwich structure inside. Compared with a solid shield, this structure can weaken the penetrating power of the warhead to the greatest extent, allowing the warhead to escape before it reaches the target. All kinetic energy is consumed before penetrating the shield. And this structure is not generated by the active armor on its own. When Kaylan was braining the shield, he thought of the composite armor often used on mechas, and the composite sandwich of the active armor is based on K-Ian's. It was constructed in the style of those composite armors that Lan thought of. Perhaps, calling this thing armor, is a bit too one-sided. Kaylan glanced at the giant shield in his hand and couldn't help but feel a little complicated. This thing seems to be able to read its own thoughts. This is not a good thing. However, as far as the current situation is concerned, if there is no shield turned into an active armor, things may become quite difficult. The nearly half-meter thick explosion-proof hatch in front of me was almost shot through. The strength of the opponent's firepower can be seen. A spot. If there is no Black Bishop among the hijackers, Kaylanda can call on fighter jets to use cluster laser weapons to carry out a surgical precision strike, directly cut off the nose of the plane where the cockpit is, and then take advantage of the aircraft. In the space before the crash, all the people on board were allowed to parachute to escape. Although this rescue method seemed very embarrassing, at least it was more straightforward, and Ark did not have to bear too much risk. However, when the Black Bishop appeared among the hijackers, the situation was completely different. The Black Bishop is equivalent to a bomb of unknown yield that may be detonated at any time. He may be just a sky monkey, but it may also be a big Evon. K-Lan doesn't dare to bet, if triggering a space-time storm in mid-air that had appeared in the Security Bureau's operational records, there was no chance of anyone on board the transport plane, including himself, surviving. Instead of taking a gamble by exploding him, K-Lan would rather he complete the sacrificial ceremony and then destroy the thing he summoned. Using a human body as a sacrifice, the strongest thing that can be summoned to fight to death is the level of an SP-level mutant. It is much weaker than a perverted existence like Seraph. Relying on the power of active armor, an SP-level creature can be torn apart by hand. Mutations are not too difficult. Previously inside a Gunactor, Park Sang-woo sacrificed the things he summoned, although it was outrageous, but considering that he was actually one of the Prophet's stand-ins, he could no longer be regarded as a human being in the strict sense, so his sacrifice rituals cannot be measured with normal eyes. The black-clothed bishop among this group of hijackers should not be a stand-in for the Prophet, otherwise, the hijackers should have called him Prophet instead of Bishop. One-on-one, the active armor should still be able to defeat the Black Bishop. K-Lan thought to himself. As for the other hijackers and the seeds of erosion in their bodies, he simply ignored them. Holding a giant shield, K-Lan stepped into the passage, the deafening sound of machine guns rang out, and the blazing muzzle flames directly illuminated the entire passage like daylight. Damn, these guys have prepared night vision goggles. P.S. Regarding pursuing reading and maintaining books, there is one thing I want to tell you. Kidian has recently adjusted the recommendation distribution mechanism like before. Kidian's recommendation positions have always been determined by the editorial team. Now Kidian has introduced big data artificial intelligence to allocate recommendation positions. Everyone should know that artificial intelligence is actually an artificial retarded person at the current technical level, and it will only be determined based on 24-hour reading. Whether a novel has potential has caused slow burning or traditional novels to suffer. However, FL-style novels with intensive early-stage excitement, big ideas, and explosive plots are very popular. I'm not saying FL style is not good. After all, everyone has their own preferences for carrots and vegetables, but after all, I can't write that kind of novel, and I am also a person who is relatively slow to update. I would like to ask everyone here, if there are chapter updates, try to subscribe or read within 24 hours, if you can't help it, don't. These days, the chance of reading a book to death is already much higher than in previous years. Although I won't cut books unless I have to, I have seen many authors who were in the same period as me and had better grades than me cut them because the data did not meet expectations. To be honest, I saw it in my eyes. It's a pity. The plot of this book has probably entered the middle stage. The secrets about the undead crew and Alpha Planet will soon be gradually revealed. The general plotline and ending have been basically finalized after many revisions. Regarding K-Ian's true identity, you can also guess here, but I will not make any reply, to prevent spoilers. The next new book may continue to write science fiction, or it may challenge fantasy or history again, but it should not be opened in 2022 for the time being. If you are really desperate, you might be forced to go to Ermau's house to build a fortress for Emperor Vladimir. I heard that we are recruiting workers now, and the wages are quite high. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 630. Large caliber machine gun bullets continuously hit the giant shield, and the huge impact forced K-Lan to slow down his progress. It felt as if a large truck was constantly hitting him. If it weren't for the support of the living armor, K-Lan would have been thrown away by this force. In contrast, the giant shield that directly withstood the impact was not as embarrassed as he was. The shield surface of the bloody shield was not rigid, but had a shape called non-Newtonian fluid. The so-called non-Newtonian fluid refers to a fluid that does not satisfy Newton's experimental laws of viscosity. Of course, many people may feel confused after hearing this statement, but in fact, many substances that can be seen everywhere in real life, all are non-Newtonian fluids. What is most closely related to human beings is the blood that is constantly flowing in the body. Viscous plasma is a very typical non-Newtonian fluid. The moment the blood-colored giant shield is impacted by the warhead, it will transform from its original solidified state into a soft and flexible fluid state, wrapping the entire warhead. The biggest feature of non-Newtonian fluids is that its viscosity will change with the change of shear rate. To use a Chinese proverb to describe it, that is, whenever you are weak, you become weak; when you are strong, you become strong. Coupled with the sandwich structure inside the giant shield that imitates composite armor, these warheads completely stagnated before they reached half the depth after being shot into the shield, and then spit out like melon seeds, and the shield's surface instantly reappeared. Recover as before. Even if the hijacker's firepower doubled, it would not be able to hurt K-Lan behind the shield. Against the opponent's fierce fire, K-Lan moved forward step by step. This is not an exaggerated rhetorical method, but a true description. Every step K-Lan takes will leave a mark on the metal cabin floor. The footprints were about half an inch deep. Only in this way would he not be pushed back by the dense rain of bullets. It took K-Lan a full 5 minutes to reach the end of the 10-meter-long passage. He directly blocked the muzzle of the heavy machine gun with his huge shield, and then, under the horrified eyes of the gunman, he waved his shield and knocked him to the ground. A crisp sound of bones being crushed came from the underground of the giant shield. The hijacker died without even remembering to scream. Then, a large number of tentacles emerged from the bottom of the giant shield. He rushed towards K-Lan with all his teeth and claws. But K-Ian's movements were faster. His arm penetrated the giant shield directly, grabbed the core of the seed of corrosion, and crushed it directly. The corrosive seeds that had lost their core suddenly stopped. After a brief period of stiffness, the tentacles softened and quickly became necrotic and decayed into fishy pus. And the blood of the false god contained in the broken core was naturally absorbed by the living armor. The erosion seed parasitic in the body of this heavy machine gunner seems to be a mutant species. The nutrients provided by the mutant species to the active armor are obviously much stronger than the common ordinary species. Several other hijackers roared and screamed hysterically, holding the trigger tightly with their fingers, constantly pouring bullets on K-Ian's body, but the 0-1 assault rifles in their hands could not penetrate K-Lan at all. The weakened version of Ian's living armor. In just a few seconds, K-Lan had killed these people along with the monsters parasitic in their bodies. K-Lan will not show any mercy to these people. From the moment they became vessels, their remaining time was running out, and when they killed innocent people, K-Lan no longer regarded them as human beings. They are the traitors of the Ark and the eternal enemies of mankind. They regard themselves as evolvers who have obtained the power of God, but few people know that the Prophet only regards them as pawns that can be abandoned at any time. Even their own leader didn't treat them as human beings, so why should K-Lan give them unnecessary mercy? There were more than a dozen hijackers blocking the cabin door, or rather heretic sect members. Each of them had automatic weapons, and at the very least, these weapons were 10mm caliber 0-1 assault rifles. Whether it was equipment, firepower, or numbers, the crisis management officers on this plane were at an absolute disadvantage. K-Lan couldn't help but feel a little lucky. Fortunately, Lin Kaiming didn't take action before he broke into the plane. Otherwise, they would all have died in the passage outside. Not only were these dozen members of the heretical sect equipped with firearms, but each of them was a vessel inhabited by the seeds of erosion, without exception. After absorbing all the seeds of erosion in these people, K-Lan clearly felt the power of the living armor has increased a bit. There are nearly 50 containers in this group of hijackers alone. With so many containers, are they always lurking inside the Ark? K-Lan had some doubts in his heart. After passing through the security system more than a dozen times, after the investigation organized by the Bureau, the number of remaining heretical sect believers on the Ark has been reduced a lot. Although the hidden ones in high positions have not been removed yet, there are no more low-level believers left. In order to deal with those who were the church members were arrested, and the Security Bureau even had to build 3 new prisons in the wilderness. What about ordinary churchgoers, let alone the container of the internal parasite's corrosive seed? With the development of technology, the testing procedure for the corrosive seed container has become even simpler than testing for HIV, and no blood test is required. Just use a special device to look at the pupils, and you can confirm whether there are any parasites of erosion in the body. With the help of this brand new detection method, the Security Bureau was able to complete full person screening again and again in those blocks with a mixed population and a highly mobile population. Those containers that usually hide in slums and some gray areas were picked up one after another. Come out, these people will not be sent to prison. The outcome waiting for them is either to be executed on the spot, or to be sent to a research institute to become experimental material for those lunatics. There will definitely be fish that slip through the net, but not many. There are nearly 50 fish that slip through the net, which is absolutely impossible to happen. Under the complete monitoring system and high-intensity screening, it is difficult for these containers to find a place on the Ark. Nearly 50 containers are lurking on the Ark without being discovered. If this news is confirmed, if so, the first thing the Security Bureau official in charge of this job would probably do is draft a resignation report. Are these hijackers coming from the wilderness? No, if they are exiles from the wilderness, then they should be black households without legal status. Black households cannot enter Yong'an, let alone enter the airport. It is impossible to even get close. However, except for a few security gates at the airport entrance, no other facilities were damaged, and no reports of abnormal conditions were reported at the security checkpoints on several roads near Yong'an. In other words, before entering the airport, this group of hijackers all held a legal identity certificate. To handle false identities for so many people in a short period of time, only the Security Bureau, Crisis Management Department and the Undead Crew Club have the ability. If you want to keep the information absolutely confidential, then the first 2 organizations can be eliminated. In this way, only the Undead Crew Association is left. Is there really an insider within the crew? No. Regardless of whether there was a mole within the crew association, Kaylan suddenly remembered an omission, which was enough to overturn all his previous guesses. People who make a living in the wilderness, due to various factors such as climate, environment and radiation, will not have the delicate skin of the residents of the Ark, just like the priestess Kaylan met in the exile camp. These hijackers disguised as flight attendants and the priestess who died tragically, they were all people who had lived on the Ark for a long time. If a person has rough skin, a lot of sunburn or frostbite scars, or even radiation sickness, you can't tell whether he is an exile or a legal resident of the Ark, because among the latter, there are also many people whose jobs require them to be exposed to the wilderness environment for a long time, but the converse is different. A woman with tender skin and delicate appearance will definitely not be an exile who lives in the wilderness all year round. No matter how stunning the beauty is, her beauty will be greatly reduced if she lives in the wilderness for 3 to 5 years. The erosion of the skin by the harsh environment cannot be reversed with skincare products and cosmetics, let alone the effects of exiles. A living condition of struggling to survive. The origins of this group of people are very problematic. But before returning to the Ark, even if Kaylan knew they had questions, he couldn't find the answers. Let's finish the work at hand first. Kaylan glanced at the cockpit door that was just around the corner and stretched out his hands. The nearly 10-centimeter thick metal hatch was cut open like a piece of cardboard under the sharp claws of the living armor. Kaylan ducked through the cut hole and walked into this aircraft. The cockpit appears extremely spacious. Thanks to the size of the Hercules transport aircraft, this cockpit is not like the cockpit of an airplane, but a bit like the bridge of an empty ship. The front end of the cockpit is a hemispherical display screen. Although there are no windows, the real-time scene outside can be accurately displayed on this screen. If Leighton were here, he would definitely tell Kaylan that this kind of the technology was developed from the full circle cockpit of mechas, but because of its high cost, few flying vehicles adopt this design. Most aircraft still use the observation mode of transparent portholes and radar, while those fully enclosed cockpits use a combination of AR and VR to minimize costs as much as possible. But when it comes to visual effects, the approach of covering most of the cockpit with a screen is more shocking. There were 4 people in the cockpit, 3, to be precise, and a body. The seats of the 2 pilots were set at the junction of the screen and the floor. The 2 people sitting in the seats were concentrating on controlling the aircraft, ignoring Kaylan, who was intruding into the pilot. Not far from the driver's seat, there was a body was kneeling face down. The hands and feet of the corpse were tied up, and the head was on the ground. There was a black hole in the back of the head. The blood and hair flowing out of the hole were condensed together. This person had obviously been dead for a while. Judging from his attire, he should be Captain Lawrence, the second missing member of the crew. Kaylan originally thought that this captain would be a member of a heretical sect like Long Chuan Nozomi, but now it seems that he was wrong. The last remaining person stood on the edge of the cockpit, staring straight at the intruder Kaylan. This was a young Asian man, wearing the uniform of an airport attendant, but at this moment, he found a large black robe from somewhere and draped it over the uniform. "Are you the Black Bishop?" Kaylan looked at him without fear. "Since you know my identity, aren't you afraid?" The other party's expression was a little strange. He looked at Kaylan up and down, his eyes full of doubts. Obviously, Ian's living armor had caused him a lot of damage. Shocking, a character like this should not appear in this action. "Do you think I will be scared?" Kaylan pointed to the screen hanging on the roof of the first floor cabin. "There are surveillance cameras outside. You should have seen how those of your men were chopped down by me. Kill them, if you don't want to become like them. My suggestion is to give up resistance and surrender as soon as possible, and I can guarantee your life safety." "Guarantee my life safety?" the black-clothed bishop suddenly sneered. "Do you mean sending me to the institute to be made into a half-dead specimen by those demons in white coats? I can't help it if you think so. But I think you are different from the vessels that are parasitized by the corrosive seeds. Your body is no different from that of humans. What you have mastered is just a method. A way to summon power from a certain being. If I'm not mistaken, it's a language, right?" "You know a lot," the Black Bishop nodded. "Then you should also know that no one who can receive this kind of gift will betray the great god." "Okay," Kaylan nodded, "then stop talking nonsense. I don't have time to argue with you. Hurry up and use all your big moves. I promise I won't interrupt you." Ian's cheerfulness made the black-clothed bishop stunned for a moment, but then his expression became serious again. "Foolish guy, do you really think so, to face his majesty?" "Yes, hurry up, I'm in a hurry," Kaylan nodded. "P.S. Thanks to book friend 202010092012358558 for the 666 starting coins, thanks to STDC for the 100 starting coins.